1999, I was 9, maybe 10. Then again, never mind. Press rewind, back in time before rappers dropping dimes. Trap or die, chopping pies with cliches all in they rhymes. That was Gucci, Prada, and anything designer. Money, power, the whole enchilada. Commas, dollars, the greens and the guava. They serve you to your flocker if you disrespect that blocker.
Choppers on these choppers, fuck these choppers. I'm a
rider like Tupac or Biggie Papa. Yeah, you oughta, but I'm hotter. Carjacking, pistol packing, motherfucking choppers clapping, metal jacket, automatic magazines, head on traffic, fender smashing, windows crashing, pants sagging, fuck your fashion. Yeah, a nigga run Manhattan, back in Cali's where it happened. Gucci, Escada, and anything designer. Groupies, poppers, they all gonna swallow. It's problem, the robbers, the goons and the goblins. They hating, a lot of Medulla Oblongata.
From New York to San Andreas, and all around the world. Going back to Cali, going back to Cali. New York to San Andreas, screaming fuck the world. Going back to Cali, going back to Cali.
Nigga was bragging, I'm really out here bowling on the west side, you know what I'm saying? West, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Just being careful out here, looking out for the enemies, cuz. You already know how we get down, cuz. Fuck the enemies, cuz. On the set, cuz. We killing everything, anything move. See, I'm shooting at niggas on the site, cuz. You already know. I'm calling the goddamn black nigga. Yeah, caught that blood nigga slipping on the cuss, cuz. Had to let that happen with the solo.
Maserati like Atari with no car keys, push it started. New Bugatti, 2 Bugattis, Tesla roaster, blue Ferrari, Lamborghini, system bumping, Minawari, Rastafari. This the hardest, supersonic, systematic, too retarded. New Versace, new apartment, bigger closet, newer carpet, hit departments, cooler garments. Set my goal, a few accomplished. Shoot at target, moving targets, new accomplice. Killed the game and still regardless, beat the charges, do the honors.
Senti, prova. Ciao Emilia, Matteo, piacere.
Estoy en Coyoacán, estoy en Amsterdam, estoy en Madrid, estoy en Medellín, estoy en Nueva York, estoy en Culiacán.
¿Qué le pasa, turn up that, turn up that, turn up that. Hey yo, turn up the, give me that. Look, just like the bass said, I can't live without my shit hitting the back of the car. It sound like somebody kicking it. Pop the trunk where it all goes down, then roll by slow. Filled with that low bass sound. They say you won't be hearing anything you play it that loud. Cause of that, cause of that, cause of my and let me get my space on me. I see you mad you ain't talking, but yeah, your face showed me. I'm at the light and I'm bumping, you smell the doty. Just turn it up louder as soon as you pass the police. Maxing out the volume like fuck it, you can't hold me. Tell them that you don't know me. Talk to the sub only, that's the feel the, hey yo, hey yo.
All systems loaded, revenge of Johnny Five. I press the fly roll bed with my dance steps. Running Man, Roger Rabbit, and electric slide. Beats of robotic sweat driven from off my helmet to my pelvis, and now all over. Baselines moving, make them rock the most. This party people, you are all the.
Prego, come stai? L'ho visto tutte e due le volte.
What? Time for a nigga to say what's up. Straight up. What? I am CA. Say go LA to the bank. Yeah, my shit, my nigga. L gang got this, my nigga. On lock, on rap, whatever. I'm rich, come smell my leather. Rich now, but I'm with whatever. Cheeseburger, no beef, come with cheddar. That I ain't tripping, take it all in. Lick a girl clit, then she take it all in. Best kush still in my joint. Say I sound too LA, that's the point. Nigga, what? Nigga, you know where I'm from. You know what I represent. Nigga, you know where I'm from. You know what I represent. Got a problem? Say that then. Say that then. Say that then. Huh? Want a problem? Say that then. Say that then. Say that then. What? Hey, where the bitches at? Please keep me away from where the snitches at. Cause I ain't tryna hear what you gon' tell me. At least stay with one hole like a belly. Cash on the Sally. Cause a nigga getting it. Rhyme in the picture it. Ain't shit different. Nigga, you sweet. You gon' need some missile. Get him cause I throw my rod deep like a fisherman. Liquor in the kitchen it. Fuck her on the floor though. Popped another molly. Rolling like a photo. Thing going down. Yeah, like your hoe go. Getting this money. Nigga ball like a cholo. Nigga, you know where I'm from. You know what I represent. Nigga, you know where I'm from. You know what I represent. Got a problem? Say that then. Say that then. Say that then. Huh? Want a problem? Say that then. Say that then. Say that then. Why?
I am CA. Sacktown, Seaside, yeah. And nigga, this my shit. Mad ass DM clear. Crew, gang, mob. Say the wrong thing, I'm poppin'. Ain't nobody lining nothing up. Ain't no favorites. We all fuck 'em up. Straight east side, no cuts, fuck a band-aid. Eating on some corn with the mayonnaise. I'm the man, and all the hoes see that. Selling pull up if a bitch nigga need that on the set.
Nigga, you know where I'm from.
Doen, dat moet je zeker doen. Oh, dat moet je doen.
Sentite? Sì. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. To those who are in this room, but also to those connected by live streaming, because we are streaming this event also outside this room. So welcome to FinTech Talks 2019. The future is now. Opportunities and risk from the running market. Today we want to give you a vision on the three main hot topics we see in FinTech, and we already discussed in the last editions of FinTech Talk these topics. Blockchain in 2016, AI in 2017, and open banking last year. Today, we want to explore with you how these trends, how the perception and the adoption of these trends are evolving over time. But we also want to talk about cybersecurity, because we know that the cybersecurity in the last year in the digital era has become a really important topic because of the risk of the innovation. One point on innovation. We think that just a decade ago, for a company, was a little bit more easy to include innovation, because sometimes it was easy to get innovation, to include innovation, because it was already on the runway. Today is not this, we are not in the same situation. We think that a reactive approach is not longer enough. We think that we need to do three things: to detect innovation and opportunities, to define our ambitions for the future, and to define the right journey to transform our companies. Today we want to talk about this with our prominent members of ecosystem. We invited different people from incumbents and other entities to talk about these trends in the cybersecurity. So for us is an honor to be here to host this event. It's the fourth edition of FinTech Talk, as I said before. And I think that we can talk about innovation in FinTech today to get some new idea and opportunities. I want to leave the stage to Matteo Rizzi. This FinTech Talk is the fourth edition, as I said, is inside the second edition of a FinTech Stage Festival. We are partner with FinTech Stage, and I think that we are doing lots of information on these trends. Please, Matteo, come here.
Thank you, Paolo. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the last good of the two moderators of the day. And together with Paolo, we're going to host you for the rest of this afternoon. FinTech Stage was born 5 years ago, and my partner here, Lazzaro Campos, we always make the joke that everyone who sees me, he says, oh yeah, this is like how modern guys, startup-y guys, t-shirt and things. Oh, don't worry, I have a partner with suit and tie. It's just to reassure everyone else, right? So, indeed, as Paolo was mentioning, this is day 2 of the second edition of the FinTech Stage Festival, which is a collection of 9 events in 9 different locations throughout this week. And I always say that we're very proud to say that Milan puts on the map like the 4th city in the world, a week where we can talk about FinTech. So before Marco freaks out because I'm losing too much time, I'm about to introduce our keynote speaker. So Hans has come from a huge tour of the world. He promised me that the brain, landed. I hope that, the rest of the body is not a hologram. And he comes from Holland, and he has a video. So the floor will be yours shortly. Thank you.
Hey, nice dog.
Yeah, this is Piper, your bred border collie. Watch this. Piper, fetch. Good boy, Piper. You're such a smart dog. So, what can your dog do?
Fergus, Bud Light.
Head dog. Fresh, smooth, real Bud Light.
Is a perception, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a perception that a lot of banks have from the startup community. On the one hand, the banker being the guy in the nice suit, and the startup guy being the guy with the dog. We just go for the balls, so to say. And you could ask yourself whether this perception that we find in the financial services industry is actually correct. We as Deloitte have been doing research in this space for a long time, and I just want to share some of our observations for those of you that are in the FinTech part of this audience. So we evaluated a total of 400,000 different startups across a period of 10 years, and we try to understand which of these startups actually become scale-ups. And our definition of a scale-up is that you would have a 10 million revenue after 5 years and obviously still be alive. And this is the percentage. 1 out of 200 actually gets there. The second one is most scale-ups are led by experienced entrepreneurs in their late 30s and early 40s. Another observation, the founders of the majority of the unicorns have twice as much work experience than the startup founder. Also, a lesson learned from those that are really successful. More than half were founded by teams and not by individuals. Only 25%, really important one, of the startups were actually designed to scale. In other words, that is a fundamental part of a success formula. And probably the most important one, timing is everything. 75% of the startups that are successful waited for the wave to be at the highest point and only then surf it. So this meme that we have in the, let's say, corporate world, we need to become a startup, you need to take a bit of a perspective on this. So I'm really happy to be here. My name is Hans Vergiek. I joined Deloitte August 1st, 2016, coming in from the office of the CIO team in Gartner, where I was a researcher. My job is actually what you said. I fly around the world, just landed from New Zealand and the big China banks in Hong Kong and Shanghai last Sunday evening. So my brain is still there, but nevertheless, I'll give it a try. When you look at this world from the corporate banking world, then there's a few observations which I'm sure some of you will recognize. One of them is banks, big banks, loathe their own legacy. Here you're looking at an example of a bank that simply to explain to the executive board and the supervisory board the complexity of the current IT landscape created a physical representation. It's half this room, just to explain how complex the technology is that the bank is trying to keep alive and keep working.
And therefore, one of the things like...
A second one is this one. Even if within a big bank you do a good job and you create a working sales machine that delivers, then still the culture is a problem.
And therefore, one of the things I have to remind myself sometimes is that it also takes a long time for a culture to change.
Yes.
And I thought that short-term success, when we set out on this journey, delivering some of the best ever customer services that we have been able to provide for our members, delivering a significant increase in terms of business benefit, an improvement in terms of pace and change efficiency. I perhaps naively thought that we would turn everybody into believers relatively quickly, and actually we've still got a long way to go on that journey because it takes
nationwide, which is one of the big financial institutions in the UK. So when I joined Deloitte, I was confronted with MIT Sloan research on the non-techie part of digital transformation. And I took the data set together with my team and started clustering the questions which had already been posed to 3,700 companies across the world. Any question about leadership, it's one DNA element. Another one on investment. Is there an investment appetite? Recruitment. And at the end of the day, we identified 13 non-techie but very important characteristics that will make a digital transformation successful or not. And then we created an algorithm and we tried to find patterns. And we found a total of 4 patterns. Laggards, chasers, fast-moving experimenters, and talent and strategy leaders. Here's the first category, laggards. They basically underperform in any domain. There is no risk appetite. There is no investment. This is average and this is below average. The only thing they have is a PowerPoint culture. They talk a lot about what the digital future will look like, long-term thinking, but there's no proof. And then there's a manifestation of digital transformation we see a lot in the banking world, the corporate banking world. That is, they still underperform, but guess what? They spend a lot of money trying to find out. You could say they're any consulting firm's dream. I say this for my colleagues here in Deloitte. And then we found 2 manifestations of successful digital transformation. The first one we call fast-moving experimenters. They have a true appetite for risk, plus 26%. They mitigate the risk by creating a large number of initiatives, so not 1 or 2, but 60 at the same time. And the leadership is very good in killing stuff at a rapid pace. They have an agile way of working and a DevOps launching platform to quickly launch what works and to kill what doesn't work. Fast-moving experiment. You might even say there is no strategy. The strategy is we'll let the data tell us, hence growth hacking, hence their approach to innovation. And then probably the manifestation we see a lot in the successful part of the financial world, which we call talent and strategy led. They are special in the sense that they do a massive investment in getting new talent into the company. Second of all, they invest in the existing workforce to be sure that you do not get this definition between the sexy part of technology versus the existing workforce that does not keep up with that. There is a clear strategy and there's strong leadership to force the bank to go there. taking into account the cannibalizing effects of those choices. And that also means that on average you would find here 5 big digital initiatives instead of 60 small initiatives. So it's an interesting question for those of you in this room that represent big institutional financial organizations. What am I now? And what would I want to be in the future? And a lot of companies in the financial services sector find these elements that I mentioned, the culture, the legacy of their systems, the environment in which they have to operate, a number of factors that will draw them back. And so they create what internally we call nightmare scenario competitors, or so-called edge plays. Basically what they do is they create outside of the bank a completely new bank with a different reporting line, different funding, different talent, different speed, different technology stack, all of that being put in place in order to prevent this new nucleus from the existing bank. The nightmare scenario element has to do with the fact that at the end of the day, the ambition is that this new bank will eat the old bank. And we as Deloitte at the moment have been involved. So I'm not talking about what we're currently doing. I'm just telling you what we did so far. Across the world have been involved in a total of 11 of those challenger or nightmare scenario banks. I'm sure you recognize this picture. For a number of years, a bank has done great business, and then new competitors enter the marketplace. New technologies enable new services. And so they create, at the edge of the organization, a new initiative. They start funding it. They start pumping in new talent. They're creating a new ecosystem of partners, FinTech partners. And once they do that, you will see that that entity will take off. It will be much faster than the existing bank. And as a result, they are able to trial new stuff, behave as a fast-moving experimenter. And because they do that, they attract investment, they attract universities, they attract talent, they attract FinTech partners. And as a result of that, they start drawing talent from the old bank into the new bank, thus transforming the bank into the next generation bank. And so this model in which you try to protect the existing bank on the one hand, but particularly the new bank from the antibodies, is what we've seen in a number of cases across the world. Second characteristic is the choices in which they operate. So we see manifestation of nightmare scenario banks that particularly focus on what we call the adjacent and the transformational part of the spectrum. So when you just keep on doing what you did, but you just put it in another entity, that's not a nightmare scenario bank. The type of bank we are talking about, using new technologies, using new approaches to speed and delivery, uncovers the unknown. It tries out new stuff, and it does it in a rapid pace. Here's a typical example of one of those 11, in this case from a bank from my own country that invested heavily in a startup that was created to bring new services to the market. Interesting part of this one is that it failed after a while. And I'm not going to go down into the root of what made it fail and what components were reusable, but an interesting observation as a case is that this new bank was delivered using a total of 12 FinTech startups within 12 months, including the banking license. Powerful tool, and very important, as you can see from the list of participating FinTech companies, no real big, let's say, vested technology vendors. Most of them were FinTech players. So here's the list so far. So again, I'm not sharing with you what we're currently doing, where we're involved in this now. This is also already delivered examples of nightmare scenario of edge banks that have been created by and funded by existing big banks in order to speed up, in order to learn how to engage with the ecosystem of platform players and to really put in place new services. So the storyline that I would like to take you through after going into the introduction is this disruption stage. We talk a lot about disruption in tech, and it can be useful to step back for a moment and say, okay, so what is the manifestation? Most of you will recognize the buzzwords, right? Changing regulation, rising customer expectations, obviously the tech itself, and also the unfamiliar competition since the barriers of entrance are going down. This is another way of representing the same thing. What used to be a very clear picture of how the banking landscape would be organized is now disseminating and fragmenting. And there are a big number of big banks. This is challenging because it poses the question, what am I? What do I want to be in the future? Where can I create the edge? And do I have the credibility to create that edge? So fast, I want to walk you through some of the trends, not going into the details, but just to get a feel of what are the forces that our clients tell us that are forcing them to consider a edge play bank, to consider starting with a new initiative outside of the existing bank. The growing fee pressures on payment transactions, big one. Margin erosion from new competitors. Competitive landscape forcing you. Shift in payments mix towards low margin rails. That's trend number one, declining payment profitability. Trend number two, democratization of the assets to the data. One technology, very important, that is changing the world of tech in finance, screen scraping, enabling new market entrants to quickly move into a market. Regulatory globally encouraging open data and data access. Across the world this is happening. I was just in Australia and in New Zealand. In all of these markets, governments is forcing the financial services sector to open up. And leading banks partnering with non-financial third parties, creating different ecosystems which also force them to use the technologies that do that.
Please, Jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're gonna do one more.
Ah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open. Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey, open door.
Play on the floor.
Get on the floor. Open the door.
Wrong
Open the door. Higher.
Higher volume.
Higher.
Higher.
It's obviously after lunch and we're in Italy, so I thought I'd make a joke, but there's a serious point behind this video. How many platforms did you see? Temperature, music, agenda, Internet of Things, smoothie, security, close the door, and probably the most important one, voice. So whilst we are talking about digital transformation, it's happening in our lives. The way in which all of these technologies are delivered is by means of platforms. It's a fundamental different way of delivering digital services. And so it's not by surprise that the third trend that we observe and that our clients talk about when they say, I want to go into a, let's say, edge play type of approach is, I want to learn how to do platforms. I want to create platforms, non-retail banks entering into consumer segments by using platforms, FinTech, and tech towards banks to modelize their supply chain, their value chain, and obviously cloud technology enabling this. You see it also in the disruptiveness of big tech that is trying to get into this world. Master of the front-end ownership, I'll give some proof of that in a moment, orchestration of infrastructure, and obviously targeting of adjacent profit pools. So in other words, there's a number of forces that are putting stress on corporate banks to adjust, And in one or two cases, the suggestion is, or even the decision is being made, we need to learn how to do this. And the current aircraft carrier, which is our bank, simply is not prepared, not suitable to learn quickly. Hence, we will create something outside along the lines that I tried to describe. And here's a typical example of a part of the financial services spectrum that I'm sure you would recognize. Over the past years, since 2000, we've seen a market volume raise in the area of the wealth management market of a substantial group of people that have crossed the threshold of being wealthy or very wealthy people. And yet, when we look at the financial services industry and how it has served this particular target audience, then I can't just explain the discrepancy between the two. And so it's not by accident that a number of these challenger banks have moved into wealth management. The example that I started out with, Prospery, is one of those examples. Because it's a typical example of a banking world that the extreme wealthy people versus the wealthy people is identified by a number of different players that all think with the right technology and the right mix, I can enter into that market with robot advice, with blockchain. Well, you know the list of the technologies we're talking about. So it's a typical manifestation of an area of financial services that is heavily being challenged by new technologies and new entrants, and thus a number of banks are trying to protect themselves or get their stake in that current market. So the game that we're talking about and the learning curve that is a manifestation in the edge play is how to become and learn how to play in a tech-intensive platform environment. And as I said, here you see the examples and the manifestations of some of the companies that do this. So the approach that we as Deloitte have taken in each of these 11 is the following. We look at it through 3 lenses. The first lens, the starting lens, the most important lens is desirability. Is this something somebody is willing to pay for? Does it address a known or unknown need in the eyes of the end customer that he or she is willing to pay for? The second one is viability. Is it allowed? Is the business case tight? Does it support our strategy? All those types of questions. And the third one, obviously, no-brainer, is it feasible from a technical point of view? So going back to the typical example that I gave with the Prospery example, here's the starting point at the time of Prospery. The starting point was we want to start from a fully digital engagement and onboarding within 15 minutes for all of the services. We want to have automated aggregation of assets, including other banks. We want to have chat and platforms for exchange communication, including robo-advice, integrated into the platform. We want to have AI for health checks on your portfolio. And we want to have a full drill down of the funds to the instrument level, all as a starting point for what that new financial services bank should look like. The second one, as I said, is looking through the lens of viability. What type of organization? I can tell you one thing, substantially smaller than you would expect in your average bank. What type of governance, operating model, organization model, and finally, the funding of all of that. The third one, extremely important, to identify the tech ecosystem that is going to deliver the fundamentals of that new bank. For a bank in a traditional environment, it is really difficult to think in terms of, I'm not going to build this myself. It's already there. I'm going to integrate it. During the course of producing Prospery, as an example, we, from the 13 FinTech partners that were in that solution, along the line, the bank and the Deloitte colleagues changed 2 of the FinTech partners. Just imagine, whilst you're on your way creating this new platform, you take out 2 bricks that are not working, and because of the architecture of the solution, it was designed to scale That is relatively easy. You take out a component and you replace it with others. As a result, we have built an architecture for banks that consider doing this, that has most of the components in there, which will allow you to quickly change FinTech partners if you feel that you should do that, or if there is any reason to suspect that you should need to do that to be future-proof. And in fact, for Deloitte as a firm itself, we have decided ourselves to enter this market by creating a platform ourselves that some of our clients are currently using API gateways and so on, to quickly create a new bank. And that is an interesting trend, that you would say, I'm going to put outside of my bank this entity that is digital by design, that has another type of DNA, that is a fast-moving experimenter, because it will allow us to quickly learn what works and what doesn't work. So in the case of the bank I was referring at, it was not one initiative, it was 5 being carried out at the same time in order to quickly learn. So the wrap-up for my contribution today is the following. First of all, we see that there's a lot of change going forward, and a lot of banks are thinking of putting in place their own platform play in the form of an external edge entity, separate from the mainstream, different reporting line, different funding. The reason being that they do not really know what the future of the banking sector will look like. There's a number of assumptions on what that future will be, and based on what you feel the future might be, the degrees of centralized interfaces, high or low, versus the penetration by non-banks interfacing. What will your future look like, and where will you play in that field? And the second part of this summary slide is, okay, if you believe that you will probably end up somewhere here, then we need a platform. And the platform has a number of characteristics which I'm summarizing in this slide. It's also important to recognize this. Although I started out by saying that the survival rates of tech trends, fintechs, or startups in general, is 1 out of 200. But that's just the beginning of the story. To really grow to a substantial player needs substantial investment. And so it makes reason that in a lot of supervisory boards and executive teams in the banking sector, the conclusion is drawn that as incumbent banks, yes, we're slow, yes, our culture is not open, yes, blah, 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 all true, but we have a lot of real assets. If only we would really learn how to do digital. We have the assets, we have the brand value, etc. And hence, another force that they acknowledge is, because if we do not move ourselves now, then big tech is going to force us to move. If you see to the level of, for instance, patents that have been coming out of the tech sector that used to be specific to the banking industry, here's the numbers. Most of the recent patents in your world have been filed by tech companies. There is a necessity, therefore, to engage with that world, whether you like it or not. So our approach is establish desirability, check on viability in terms of the business model and the company that you're going to create outside of the main bank or financial services company, and the feasibility on the tech side. We have documented each of these cases. Happy to share some of our lessons learned, which obviously we will not do in public here. But I think it's important to sorry guys, because I think it's important to, in this phase of the game, to really learn from others. There's a lot happening in there. Nobody has the golden bullet answer of where to go. But one thing is for sure, we need to engage with this new world, as this last video probably best illustrates.
Emma. Huh?
Emma. 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 Emma.
Thank you. I definitely think that your brain landed, Hans. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, do you need some help? So, I would like to invite on stage Paolo, who will help me in moderating this conversation, and then Roberto Nicastro and Marco Giorgino. So Marco is vice president at UBI Banca, and Roberto, yes, and Marco. So Marco is the head of FinTech and InsurTech Observatory at the Politecnico di Milano. Sorry, it's the longest title ever. Oof, okay, and Roberto is vice president at UBI Banca. Paolo, you have met before. So, Paolo, there is an amazing survey that you guys have been conducting. We are going to now overview 3 of the topics you did the survey for, starting with AI, I think. Is it? Yes, starting with AI. And my first comment on this was, why Netflix, remember guys our phone conversation, why Netflix arrived to inject AI and machine learning in the way they submit us the content that we are supposed to see, and banking hasn't. So, cut a long story short, 2 years ago we said AI is going to be fundamental. But we seem to be lacking behind.
Thank you for the question. It's very amazing and interesting. I mean, one of the results of the survey is that in 2 years, AI will be disrupted. And we got the same answer 2 years ago. So maybe there is something to do better. So I think that AI is different from blockchain and open banking or other trends because it needs cultural change. This is my summary of what is happening. I mean that artificial intelligence needs interaction with customer, interaction with employees, and I think that both categories, people, has to improve how they involve with artificial intelligence. If they use artificial intelligence to augment the analysis, or if they want to interact with the artificial intelligence. So my simple answer is that we need, and we will see, a parallel shift in cultural change and artificial intelligence adoption, especially in complex industry and sectors like financial services.
Marco, you want to add something?
I think it's very. You listen to me?
I closed the microphone.
Okay, now it's open. Thank you. I think it's quite difficult to compare Netflix with the incumbent banks. Netflix business model is based upon also artificial intelligence. Now we have to change a very consolidated industry, that is the banking one. And so I totally agree with Paolo about what is the issue coming from the culture. So it's very difficult to change a culture of a very consolidated industry as incumbent banks are. Anyway, I think the message that came from the presentation from Mr. Van Griekel, it's quite optimistic. I think still today incumbents have a lot of assets on which it's possible to build this kind of transformation. And so I think that the battle is still open.
But you have a great segue now to what's the view from the incumbents.
Yes, well, first of all, I think that banking is a little bit of a misleading word, in a sense that within banking we have completely different businesses. With payments that are relatively simple transactions on one side. On the other hand, we have wealth management that is a very complex transaction. Out of the first movie was shown to us, we saw actually very different transaction, and interesting enough, a not pleasant one, like a dentist, was not, let's say, supported by artificial intelligence. It's not a coincidence, it's because that type of business is the one where AI is more difficult to be applied. Now, within this frame, in fact, I think banks have to recognize that they operate very, very different things, where when it comes to payment, AI, but generally speaking, digital technology is already extremely advanced, and banks cannot afford at all to sleep on any matter. On the other hand, when one looks at wealth management, that's an area where probably also in the medium term, the most successful solution will still have a combination of physical elements and AI. And so I believe that it's quite relevant to have very clear in mind the different ways of impact that AI can have, and let's say be very specific in developing, investing into that. The other thing that comes to mind here in the fact that people keep saying is very, very important, that AI is very, very important, is the typical risk we have that we tend to overestimate the impact of technological innovation in the next 12 months, and we underestimate the impact of that in the next 10 years. So a concern can be that if we keep saying that it's important, but we don't do much about it, it's going to change and ruin the banking system at all. So it's definitely something on which we need to invest, and probably even in 2 years' time, even if not too many things will have changed, still AI will be extremely important.
Just a couple of points. I think it's if you look at the numbers coming from the Savi, you see how the speed at which AI is implemented is quite low. So investments are low, and it's very difficult to change the organization to put in place those kind of solutions. But why? Because you have to understand that if you accelerate in this way, you have a lot of benefits, but you discover a very big problem. Half of the people that today we have in the industry will not be necessary. So this is a big issue to be put in consideration. So that's why I think the speed is also determined by the worry about the fact that probably we discover a big problem that is a big social problem about what are the real necessary people within the industry. First point. Second point, I found it very interesting, one of the slides that you showed before, that was the one related to the asset management industry, the wealth management industry. It's quite impressive how the volumes are increasing a lot, but asset management companies are gaining less than what they were able to do in the past. And profitable, sorry, thanks. So it's not the case that one of the most important areas of applications of AI is in the asset management industry for a couple of needs. First of all, about what is the construction of the best portfolio, so within the process. Big data, AI, a lot of information, and so it's important to optimize what is a very traditional process, how to allocate our money, how to allocate capital, first of all. Secondly, I find really very interesting the combination between the human factors and the technological factors. Try to consider what can be the interaction between a private banker and his or her customer. I'm not saying that we have to use just AI, but if we give him or her AI, probably we give him or her the opportunity to be better in front of his or her customers. So technology as a component that could optimize the relationship between the bankers and their customers.
So we do have like 3 topics to cover. And by the way, there is a panel dedicated to AI just after this one. I know what a couple of speakers are going to talk about, but if we had time, or maybe one of you can give his own opinion on this, the insurtech space is even possibly as compelling as the wealth management space for AI. Why? Because InsurTech is all about processing a massive amount of data, is all about machine learning, behavioral learning, and how do you say it, insights from the behavior of, for example, the drivers. And I know that Arnaud is going to talk about it in a while. So it is, if we take financial services at large, there are many more opportunities where it can be compelling.
Now that you are talking about various subsectors, my view, and definitely will be a wrong one, is that, as we said before, on payments, lots of things have already happened. In wealth management, my belief is that for a long period of time, it will be B2B solution, a partnership between banks and FinTech, the key solution. And from this standpoint, we have to highlight that, as an example, the largest robo-advice in the world, which is Betterment, after 10 years from foundation, has less assets than a small core bank in the country, which definitely tells that the complexity of the transaction definitely requires still an important alliance between bank and FinTech. Where I see a lot of important things coming and happening, in my view, is in the lending space. In lending, many pieces of the business model can definitely see a major discontinuity coming from AI. If you think about things such as, for instance, the possibility of using alternative rating in the scoring area, machine learning, scoring development, the use of big data to look at the ecosystem of the customers. If you think about the impact of AI on fraud detection and prevention, if you think about the automation of operations, there's really many, many things. So I think that incumbent banks have to look with particular interest, in my view, on the lending space. It's the next phase after the payments, where AI and digital will make the biggest inroads.
Great, thank you. So let's switch now to the second topic, which is open banking. So before Paolo maybe give a couple of highlights on this, my question on this one is very provocative. I have the impression that most of the open banking projects in banks are driven by where there is budget on IT to do stuff, rather than what are we really trying to achieve and optimize by offering third-party services and exposing our data and APIs to third parties. Okay, so this is, and it's not because I have, I'm an inside observer, so but just from a number of discussions. So, Paolo, your view on this?
This controversial question. I think that it's not just an issue of budget, it's also because incumbents are very focused on protect their own margins, and maybe data sharing could be seen as something that can affect the margins and the client's management. On the other side, I think that the open banking, and we can see also in the survey, is not just a data sharing goal, but it's also to decoupling 4 points that are design, distribution, management, and IT components, architecture. So maybe it's more complex than just data sharing or regulatory compliance. This is my very synthetic answer.
Yeah, I believe that open banking is, simple to say, threatened opportunity when we look at it from the standpoint of European banks. The opportunity comes from the fact that, in a way, the fact that Europe is the largest world area in which regulators have been so tough in pushing forward the opening of the banking activity, in a way I believe will act as a forcing device, so that in this area we may see European banks that often have been a bit rear. They will have the need to be the most aggressive in facing open banking. So there's an opportunity, and from this standpoint, we are hearing also investors from the Far East now investing into European companies developing open banking solution. Again, or mainly because they believe that this will be the area that might, let's say, dictate developments worldwide. Having said this, the challenges for banks are really big. Banks that inside have to manage silos, and so put together people to work coming from different functions, have a major challenge from this standpoint. Banks have the cultural issues, the legacies. It can be skills in terms of people, and there is a huge legacy of the core banking system. This is still a big question mark, let's face it. All world big banks are kind of hostage of their own core banking system. And all the cost of developing any solution by somebody coming from the outside is peanuts compared to the cost of developing the same solution on an existing core banking system. That is also clearly for somebody like Deloitte a fantastic opportunity to provide the answer to us incumbent banks. And last point, a big issue is what I would call the tyranny of the quarterly results. That makes very, very difficult to act into transforming the existing business. Very, very often, unfortunately enough, within banks and within companies, you have those who make innovation and those who make business, with the difficulty to making sure that those who make business are really in a position where they can transform the business. And I'll tell you, from the inside of a bank, it's a big, big problem, because in any case, every 3 months you have to deliver commission, fees, loans, and so on. And doing that in parallel with doing the investment of transforming your assets, your skills, and so on is a huge challenge. And I see, frankly, often private banks, there are not many, being in a better position simply because they don't have this type of quarterly constraint.
Marco. I totally agree with Roberto on this point. In fact, if you consider what are the ownership structures of the banks, also public banks, where you have a strong entrepreneur, you see how the level of innovation is higher than what is for public companies, for banks whose ownership structures are more fragmented. So it's important to understand what is the vision, what is the time which you have to get results. Anyway, coming back to your question that I find really very interesting, what is the entry point? What is the entry point? Is the IT function or the business functions is a big issue. I think that it's important to understand what is the entry point, and we cannot separate innovation from business. We have to put all together. So we need business managers that are more oriented to innovation. We are moving around an industry that, historically speaking, it hadn't a so high level of innovation until some years ago. So today, open innovation, open banking is a big, big opportunity, but I think is also a big need, not only an opportunity. Is a need because you have three main forces that are driving towards an increase of the rate at which innovation must be implemented. First of all, the competitive pressure. We have a lot of competitive pressure coming from not banks, like, for example, big techs or other bodies like those. Secondly, customers want to have different things, and it's not sufficient to change the way through which we make something. So it's not only a matter of transformation of something that was traditional in a more innovative way. It's a mindset of building new innovative products and services. Third point that I think it's very important to remember is banks still today must recover efficiency. We have still today cost-to-income ratios that are quite high, And they need to have a redefinition of their revenue models, because we know that most of the banks today are not profitable. Most of the price-to-book values of public banks on the market are lower than 1. So the perception about the trade-off between returns and risk today is still not positive. So open banking is not an opportunity, but is also a need. But why? We have talked a lot about that, but there is a very important gap between the number of words and the number of facts. So is still today a big distance. Because probably we need to change the culture of the banks, so more oriented to innovation. And because we have to change the entry point. IT, 2/3, I'm looking at Italy, so I'm sorry if I'm not international now, but looking at our country, 2/3 of the IT expenses of Italian banks are for the past or for maintenance of the legacy systems, and specifically related to the compliance, so to be compliant with regulations. So how it's possible to innovate when you don't have a lot of money and most of the money must be put for the story or for being compliant with what the regulators want? So the entry point must be changed, and I think we have to go into the banks for developing open platforms and open banking solutions, sharing data with business people. And the concept of ecosystem, again, is something on which we have talked a lot, but we have to implement more things, so again, a gap. And it's important, you see how FinTechs in the first wave were on the market for attacking incumbents. Now the second wave is quite different, because FinTechs are there for being your partners and not necessarily your competitors. In our observatory around the world, we are monitoring more than 1,200 startups. They had already a round of financing, so they already had the opportunity to raise money from the market. And we see how the FinTechs or the InsurTechs that have a development plan based upon the collaboration with incumbents are able to raise 3 times more the money that the other ones are able to raise if they have a standalone plan. So it's important to build an ecosystem, because I think the sources of innovation are not inside the banks, but mostly are outside the banks.
So, Marco, I absolutely agree when you say that open banking is also a need. It is certainly a need more, even more, on the customer side than on the banking side, by the way. And actually, I want to tell a story and a subsequent question. So one of the programs that we do at the FinTech stage, we call it FinTech for Corporates. So we basically study the corporate-to-bank relationships, and we bring startups and technologies that can improve or enrich the experience of large and mid-sized corporates in the way they do cash management, alternative lending, factoring, you name it, okay? So this is a real conversation that we had with financial institutions, and we were talking about, currency exchanges, in large corporate deals. They say, oh yeah, I can introduce you to 5 grown-ups, scale-ups that can optimize that. You can offer a faster service, saving cost, multi-currency, but say, wait. This is what we make huge amount of margin on this. But that startup is also going directly to the corporate selling. So where is the cursor between optimizing the experience and the services of the customer and almost jeopardizing your own business for bank, which is, this is where, when you say it is needed, certainly, in this case, do the corporates need a better service in currency management? For sure. Can the bank offering using open banking and collaborating with startup? For sure. Does the bank want to do this, and when? That's the issue. So isn't it all about, or also about timing?
Okay. I think you put in a very, very good question. It's very clear that when it comes to the retail customer, it's clear that there is enormous value for the bank to provide, let's say, the gate point for many different apps. And as a result, on the retail side, the answer is that there will be still always a role for somebody who simplifies the life of customers. So just like we can have an app stores, but then we still need a gateway. So the bank can provide the gateway. On corporate customers, it can be more difficult, and you're right, in certain instances, you might, let's say, develop something together with the FinTech company and then see that going directly on corporate customers. I believe that in such context, in certain instances, some kind of common gateway can still provide a value also for corporate customers. On the other hand, I believe banks will have to be much more puzzled on one side and clear on understanding exactly what is the additional value contribution that the FinTech or the solution gives to customer, because that can be a competitor. So we'll have to try and find areas of strong integration so that the overall value given to customer is something that provides also from itself and not just from the external tech app. You're right.
I think the answer cannot be only one. No, you have to understand what are the main factors that we involved in the decision, and I think there is a trade-off between internalizing everything or externalizing everything. So what is the value to share with the third parties? So I think it's very difficult to give you an answer that is related to something that is not so specific. And so I think case by case we have to understand what are the costs and the benefits related to every decision.
Okay. Paolo, should we move to the third, or do you want to comment on the... Okay, so one of my favorites, blockchain. We haven't pronounced it yet so far, but it would be a miss if we haven't. Paolo, you are a co-lead of the blockchain lab, right? And this is where I believe there is possibly the most discrepancy between intentions and realities. We all say blockchain is good, is going to disrupt, viva blockchain. But at the end of the day, when you see the amount of actual projects that have been invested, it's at least in Italy is very little. What are your views on this? There is no mic. No.
Okay. We still are convinced that blockchain will change our future, but I think that 1 year ago we have the high level of hype on blockchain, and for me, likely in the last year, we were more wise, more prudent to understand what we can do or what we cannot do with the blockchain. I can give you just 3 features that are for me the pillars of a blockchain, and so the 3 use cases that we can build really with the blockchain. The 3 features are: first is decentralized, distributed ledger; the second, immutability; the third, automation. That means smart contracts. Smart, it depends if you are doing something good. So these are the 3 main features of a blockchain. So the main use cases could be transfer of asset value. Timestamping means immutability information shared by counterparties. Third, tokenization of economy. But we need regulation. Without a common regulation, I think that we cannot improve and accelerate the blockchain adoption. But I think that now regulators are talking a lot, and I'm optimistic that we will have some new schemes where we can imply blockchain. Blockchain is not a problem of a technology implementation. It's a problem of models and regulation.
Probably among the 3 issues that we are talking about, this one is the most relevant and could be the higher potential for the future. I was quite impressed about the numbers related to how few are the investments here in Italy about blockchain, but I think the numbers are quite underestimated. because probably most of the banks that are investing a lot on that don't want to tell the market what they are doing. And so I think the level of disclosure is quite low. Anyway, we will discover in the future if it's true or not. Every disruptive technology, as blockchain is, has a very long, needs a long time to be implemented. So I'm not worried about the pace of change about blockchain today. I think the right banks are doing right investments, so we'll see results in the future. But we have also to consider how the regulators were also quite late about following those innovations. Now the story is different because both at domestic level and the European level, the level of attention about blockchain is becoming higher and higher. So it's quite positive. We were used to relate blockchain to cryptocurrencies, but now we are understanding it as not true. And probably the customers don't see what is the level of implementation of blockchain, because B2B can observe a higher level of diffusion, but at the attention of the customers, the perception is different. For example, in the food industry, we have a lot of projects in blockchain, diamonds, the tracking of diamonds, and also in the financial industry. I think, and I close because I see how our time is going at the end, we need some factors that can be enabling the level of diffusion of blockchain. First of all, we need to put around the table many operators. The numerousness of the operators is important. The heterogeneity of the operators is important. The location, the more cross-border they are, the better it is. And the level of trust, the lower the level of trustness among them, the higher the probability to have a higher diffusion of the blockchain. And the final component in our observation and our research is represented by the value of the asset that you want to exchange, so the value of transaction. The higher it is, the more is the interest of the operators to implement those kind of solutions. So I'm quite optimistic about that for the future.
Roberto, quick comment.
Yeah, I believe that blockchain is the area where currently in this country we have the biggest difference between reality and potential. If you look at reality, the reality is that since blockchain application in banking tend to go more on wholesale than retail, they have been less developed by Italian banks that tend to be more retail than wholesale, point number one. In Italy, point number two is clear that one interesting case is showing the fact that user cases in more instances still are lagging, and I just make just a reminder to everybody that only 2 months ago we saw the bankruptcy of one virtual currency exchange in Florence, BitGrail. Okay, this is not blockchain; it's more, let's say, but clearly shows how much the technology is still immature. On the other hand, if we think that in this country we have 6 million small businesses, we have to believe that over time, the moment in which the technology is mature, I think that no other countries like Italy will benefit from that, because these 6 million companies do generate enormous transaction costs throughout the country. And so if blockchain can make a discontinuity there, I believe that the potential in this country for blockchain will be huge.
I totally agree. And actually, the more vertical you go in the financial services business, and we were mentioning in the call, the prop tech business. So where real estate crosses FinTech, and you have, for example, a high need of notarizations of the transaction, this is a no-brainer. Actually, there are already successful startups that are doing this, because when it is helped and they can square the regulatory angle, then the benefit of such a solutions are really a no-brainer. So our time is up. Thank you very much. Please join me in a big round of applause for our panelists. And it's about time I called my business partner, Lazzaro. We mentioned that AI was the first topic that we mentioned in this panel. Are we using AI right?
Or are we not? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Lázaro Campos, FinTech Stage co-founder. And to take you through the next session, I'd like to invite my colleagues Emilia, Stefano, and Arnaud to join me here in the stage, if they still want to. So this panel follows on one of the trends that has been talked about, of course. Organize, please. And it's all about AI, and specifically the uses of AI in financial services. But of course, I have to apologize. AI is just too big to fit in a room of this size. AI can be anything and everything. Just for the purposes of this exercise, and I do not like to create stereotypes and use big words, but artificial intelligence, let's just call it the replication of cognitive functions of humans, say problem solving, say learning. That is artificial intelligence. We will keep it at that level. We're not going to go into what is data analytics, where do they meet AI. So we're going to try to keep it high level in terms of definition, but the panelists will bring pragmatic examples of how AI is used today and is likely to be used in future. And the focus of the session is very much on what's coming. It's not what's behind us, but what's in front of us. And for that, we have the CEOs of two fintechs, and we have a representative from the European Commission who will, to start with, tell us what the high-level expert group of artificial intelligence in the European Commission does. Stefano. Could we ask, if I may, could we ask that all mics are on at all times instead of up and down? Just keep them on so they can contradict each other actively.
I had to turn it on.
Okay.
So it works better if you turn it on. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. Yes, I've been selected as being one of the members of the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence by the European Commission. We are 52 persons. We are expert in different fields, but all related to artificial intelligence. We are not the European Commission executives. We are not part of the government. Well, some are part of government. We come from different different organizations, different type of organization. We are a truly multi-stakeholder group of experts coming from academia, industry, consumer representative, well, associations, and any kind of really any kind of social player, economic player. And we were tasked to prepare recommendations. We have a 2 years working plan, and we were tasked to give recommendations to the European Commission on what to do in order to favor the development of AI in Europe, so that Europe can stay a powerhouse in the AI game, and to do so, make some recommendations in order to make AI trusted. As the first thing we did, we had to self-organize, really. So we were completely free. We are completely free.
So did you apply AI, or did you did that yourself?
No, we did that with very little intelligence, I must say. It was more a chaotic kind of, no, just kidding. But we had to self-organize, even choose the tools that we're going to use. We are completely free in our efforts, and we self-organized. We decided what to do, and we even changed the scope of our mission. So we are no longer working on how to make AI trusted, but rather how to make AI trustworthy, which is a minor change, but really it's significant. We think, because we think that in order for to deriving the most benefits from the technology, we need people to trust it. So we need that the technology applications are trustworthy. So it's not really about trust, but about trustworthiness. And so that was how we define our mission. And we organized on 2 deliverables our work. So the first deliverable we already delivered. It is the ethical guidelines. You know, when you do software, when you move away from the deterministic algorithmic kind of software that we are all used to do, and we move into the statistical probabilistic domain, you end up dealing with false positives, false negatives, and then a number of issues come along, and bias in the data sets, so problems in the data that you are using in order to train the systems, to build the models. And so you need to have some guidelines, some ethical guidelines on how to use these systems and what to do when these systems make wrong prediction, accurate predictions that are incorrect. Accurately applying the model, but the predictions are incorrect, for example, and how to deal with the bias in the data set, and which kind of data you should correlate, etc., and how you deal with that. So we ended up making these ethical guidelines, and that was the first deliverable, and we ran a public consultation for a period. We provided a self-assessment tool. I'm going to rush.
Yeah, please.
Just very quickly. But this is important so that you can decide to benchmark yourself against this self-assessment. And the second deliverable is going to be policy recommendations for increasing research, development, applications, diffusion, and grow the business. If I can say just very last thing, we tend to think about Europe as being a laggard compared to China and the US in this area, but it's not true. In Europe, we have about twice as much the university graduates in STEM, in science, technology, economics, and mathematics, than compared to the US. And we are by far the significantly ahead of China and the US in terms of patents and in terms of research papers and in terms of citations about AI. So we are definitely a powerhouse in AI. We need to know it.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you. Thank you. Emilia, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So what is Quantum Leap IP, and a bit of your background so they know what to listen to?
Yeah. Okay, Quantum Leap is a company that is specialized in technology transfer. So Quantum Leap helps industries and research centers in doing innovation together. In AI is also a sort of, consultant in this field. But our interest of AI is mostly focused on helping startups in reaching the market, and also in doing international competition. So for this reason, we are helping international prize on AI and avatar also technology. And we are dealing Italian startups in be winner on this great and important competition. That is a X Prize Foundation is the owner of this. And so about AI, my point of view, and AI on FinTech, but also in terms of general approach, what I see is that in terms of defining if we are on the right or wrong way, I think that is not a real fully consciousness about AI, coming from also banks in the sector of AI, or coming from users that are citizens, and coming from regulators. I think that this is because, of course, we don't have experiences in and enough observation of the impact of AI. But this is a big problem in terms of defining the right approach in using AI, because what I see is a sort of common trend in following technology and following AI, just because for this reason we are not really conscious about what we are doing. And this is a big problem because we are divided into a big wall that are two different directions. There is one wall made by and shaped by the owner of digital platform on AI software, and are the owner of course, AI services that have a clear perspective and a clear idea of what they want to go, and they would like to have free hands to reach their goals. In the opposite way, there is regulators, users, banks, and players of the old world that are not able to run like the first players in the first part of the world, that they are trying to be into this new world, but without thinking in a critical way about, I think, the most important question that we have all together considered. And the question is, we wanted to follow the technologies, the frontiers technology and AI, or we wanted to shape it. This is the point. If we try to consider that probably we are in the position in which we can design it, drive the final use of AI, and if we are confident that we can start from an approach that is really human-centric, maybe we can also find a lot of answer to the big question that we heard in the first panel today. And this kind of consideration is called utopia. That is easy, because when you call this utopia, you don't do anything. But the point is, okay, human beings and banks in these fields have the power to decide, and the regulators have the power to regulate in each country this new big and unique transformation. So my point of view, my perspective is that we probably need to stop, and all together, regulators and also banks and also users, try to define the ethical rules, but also the real use that we wanted to have coming from AI, and not the opposite way.
Very good. So you've introduced the subject already. Thank you for that, because that is a very important point. And we see it not only with AI, we see it with blockchain, we see it with all new technologies. We get caught in using the tool instead of solving the problem. Arnaud, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. You have a very applied, very specific way in which AI helps you offer services.
Yes, well, our job is to provide AI solution for insurance companies. So, well, to be honest with you, I start to use the word AI since only 6 months now, because I am an engineer, I am a researcher, and we use together between engineer and researchers, we are using the word machine learning and never AI, because AI is kind of bullshit. We don't use it. So, and that's funny, because 30 years ago I coded my first program on machine learning. It was a kind of AI actually, but and people told me, okay, stop studying AI. It's bullshit. It will never work. And 6 months ago, when I started to use the word AI for my pitch, a financial guy from a fund told me, stop using AI in your slides, because everybody uses it and it's bullshit. So, well,
so do you use AI now or not?
Yes,
would you like to step out of the
channel? 6 months, because for the first time of my life, I had a good definition of what is AI, because it's never clearly defined. My definition of AI is simple. It's machine learning with the meaning or without the meaning. This means that if you are ready to not to understand what the machine is computing, this is AI. If you use machine learning to spend the week on holidays and not thinking about why the machine is decided to go right on or left, this is AI. If you're just using a machine learning as a statistical tool, it's not stupid, but it's not AI. It's just a new way to understand the data. Let's say that during 1,000 years, technology was here to help people to understand the world. with AI, this is a revolution of AI. I think it's with AI, you don't need to understand the world anymore because AI is doing it for you.
Okay. Could you just tell us a bit more about role-based score? Just a very short, not using the word AI at all.
Okay. Okay. In role-based score, we predict driving behavior based on your activity on social media. And the aim is obviously to decrease the number of claims for insurance company. And we start not to understand what our algo is doing actually. I never say that to our clients and insurance company. We say but we start not really to understand why for our algo this guy is a good driver and this guy is a risky driver just based on the way he is clicking on like on its Facebook page. But it works. So it's AI actually.
Okay. How does that fit with what you consider AI and the ethical? Is it that definition works with you? So the moment you lose control, that's AI.
Well, that's one part of the story for sure. We also started by defining what we mean by AI.
Yeah.
And of course, there is this part of machine learning, but you have also symbolic approaches and more rule-based systems that still exist. There are companies with tens of millions of rules that have knowledge bases with tens of millions of rules, and they are still in business and they do well in their domains. So I would not completely rule out the old school of expert systems. So that's another part. So if we talk about machine learning, yes, well, what he just said is, well, who cares about what's going inside? Let's focus on the output. And that to some extent is okay, but then what happens if you are, for example, you use an AI system to do recruiting and somebody tells you, no, you cannot apply for this position. Why? Because the machine told so. Or you enter into a no-fly list and you cannot get a flight ticket, and you ask why, and they tell you, well, because the machine told so. We have two measures that are called precision and recall, that are the measures of how good the system is performing. And while, for example, in China, you might be interested in recall and just getting all the criminals and then who cares if 5 non-criminals going to a lager? I mean, that's I'm sorry for them, but for the overall society, that's okay. But for our European values, that's not okay. So we want to be more precise, not have an extreme coverage of the output. So that's kind of the decision that we need to take. And in our ethical guidelines, we cover that. So for systems that have a significant impact on people's lives, we ask that we have explainability. Explainability, well, there is research going on in explainability, but that will become, it will, it reminds me of when we started with privacy regulation. Everybody was talking about privacy and seeing privacy as a complication for business, just get privacy of this and let's do business. And now we understand that privacy is a key asset and it's a key competitive advantage of Europe. And the American companies are coming to Europe to litigate, and they are borrowing from our regulation all around the world. So that is what we are trying to propose to the Commission, that we do the same for AI. Of course, it may hurt somehow having to explain things, and perhaps we have to wait before when we have good models for doing explanations, for example, RISE or other systems. But that will help building trust and confidence in the people using the systems, and that will benefit companies in the end.
Okay. So assuming that we find a way to excuse me? Let's push ourselves to the time where we actually understand and we can take advantage of machine learning and AI in general. Where is it that is most useful for us? What are the areas that you think are up and coming and we should be the three of you. Okay. The three of you.
Okay. I just spoke, so let's ladies first. Okay, you have the mic.
There are, of course, many fields in which AI can support human life, professional.
Not can support. Where are the areas where you think, in your, what you said earlier, it really struck a chord in saying is let's stop following technology, let's really guide technology to the right places. So what are those places?
Yes, in taking better decision, but without replace the final decision from human beings.
Okay.
But it's not so easy to reach it because in the meantime in which we are speaking about it, if you are in Delaware, for example, you can build an algorithmic entities that is completely legal, that is a sort of is a legal company that is completely under control of AI. So we have this gap between what we want to do and we are doing to do and what is happening now in the other parts of the world. And the problem is the velocity is completely different.
But that's always been the case. You know, jurisdictional arbitration, that happens in every business, right? So Delaware exists for everything, right? You know, and Switzerland exists, and the Cayman Islands exist. So, so there are different levels of control, different levels of difficulty, and but if we are to look at AI and try to apply it to the best, is it health? Is it insurance? Where is it that we have most value to get from? Where does financial services fit in that? And which area of financial services? Do you have a view?
Yeah, probably in money management, in manage the risk, the financial risk.
Risk
absolutely.
management. Okay.
Risk management is absolutely. And I will not, but the most important probably field is in the customer care, when there are many functionalities that AI can replace.
Okay, and if we are to log risks and concerns as we go along, one is jurisdictional arbitration because the laws are not the same everywhere. The ethical issues to do with the explainability issues, instead of the machine says, oh, by the way, many times you go into the chicken counter, and even with traditional systems, the machine says, right? So I think we need to take into account that explainability applies to the old technology as much as to the new technology, because people don't know how it works. It just knows the result. But yeah, so those exist. Those risks are there. More areas of interest for financial services.
I think it's artificial intelligence is disrupting intelligence. This means that in any area where intelligence and knowledge is important will be disrupted by artificial intelligence. So this is so there is so many areas that will be disrupted, but I think obviously the biggest value is on bank and insurance. There is a smell of revolution. It's like AI is like the yellow jacket in front of bank and insurance companies. You know, the yellow jacket in France. That's all. Gilets jaunes, yeah. Gilets jaunes.
You have to. Every time a French panelist talks, Gilets jaunes find their way into the talk.
It's
like Brexit, Catalonian independence. You know, it's one of those.
It's exactly like the industrial revolution 150 years ago. This means that a lot of people that are really useful, that are bringing value now in companies, in the market, will begin unuseful in 5 or 10 years. This is artificial intelligence do not need intelligence anymore to work because it's its job. Artificial intelligence needs people to feed it, and to assess it, and to train it, and that's all. This means that I think that a lot of people in this room are
artificial
has to be concerned about will your job will you be replaced by an artificial intelligence in 5 or 10 years. I won't bet on this because the revolution is really coming.
Okay, so I think we're in two parts of it. One thing that Emilia said, and resonates with me. Okay, yes, but the human has to be there somewhere. You seem to be, humans only get in the way.
No, we need human. You remember the video with a guy, with a dentist guy, with a voice reconnection failure, etc., etc. Just think about this movie. It was brilliant to put this movie at the beginning. What is the guy doing actually? He is training an artificial intelligence because the artificial intelligence failed to provide the right answer. So day 2, the artificial intelligence will improve itself and will improve itself for this guy and for all the humanity that are using this kind of system. This means that artificial intelligence gives benefits to humanity, but needs also kind of slaves, digital slaves, human slaves, to be trained by human. So what is the position of human and humanity in front of artificial intelligence? Feed it and train it. And you don't have to be intelligent anymore.
Okay, good. Great.
I have a different view. If I
Please,
can.
I hope so. I hope so. Please,
no,
go ahead, Stefano. Go ahead.
Can you take square roots by hand? I can. Can you?
It'll take me a bit, but I think I used to.
Well, but then you have a machine that is being trained in order to make square roots. Who cares? That's not your job. I mean, that part of your job might go away, fine, but overall job stays. Managing exceptions, being able to generalize, being able to solve new problems, being able to face different new situations. Of course, there are some jobs that never have a new situation, that never need to generalize, that never need to abstract. There may be, but generally these are functions of the job, so not overall jobs. I must say that in the last few years, what we have seen is that all analysts agree, and I agree from the start, that we are going to see a job increase by means of automating portion of the jobs, an increase of productivity, etc. If we go back a number of years, I'm lucky enough to have started working in the late 80s. I remember when we talk about personal computers, then I remember when we talk about the internet, and then we are talking about AI, which is a different way of programming. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be everywhere. So now you have robotic process automation and chatbots, and that's okay. But wherever you produce data, and we are going to produce a significantly larger amount of data thanks to the Internet of Things and to miniaturization and things getting cheaper, etc., and smaller. So wherever you have data, you can extract knowledge, and then you have to decide and use that knowledge. And so we are going to have such a ton of data to use and to manage that we are going to need higher level cognitive functions in order to decide what to do with that. And instead of using Excel, we are going to use an AI system. That's fine with me.
Somebody in a session earlier in the week said, actually it was Microsoft, Fabio. He said, and it stuck with me because I think that captures part of the problem. Says, look, you used to use keyboards and to give instructions to computers. Now computers, you needed to apply computer language to tell computers what to do. Now, we're asking them to understand us in a much more voice recognition and everything else, to increase the bandwidth of input so we can take benefit from them more than the other way around. That's part of the problem, though. Because what you were saying is that where is the human element there, and will we be replaced? So there, please.
No, I just wanted to say that, of course, I told before also that I think that instead to training humans, absolutely, we need to teach the machine to support us. Absolutely, I have this clear vision. And before we heard about one need that is the most important thing, the thing is which kind of need we want, and we really need to shape it in the future. Okay, when we heard before speaking about the desirable needs, I think that we need to take care about the meaning of need, because the need are what really we have to desire freely in our future life. And we need to take care about avoiding any kind of need that is made desirable by the others. That is a big difference. So it's not easy to define what we need in the future, because we have a lot of services, a lot of products coming from AI, coming from a lot of things. But this is the big challenge, I think.
Okay.
And in this challenge, we will probably find a good way and the right way to use AI.
Okay, so unfortunately we're running out of time. We were getting excited. I was planning on asking you, and I never got an opportunity. AI at work.
We have elections, you know.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, from everything we've said, or you've said, what would you like them to take away with them? A tweet summary of the key message you want the audience to take related to anything we've said, AI, your personal views, your phone number, anything you want. We don't need to, because we are artificially intelligent. It will figure out. The system will figure it out.
I start. Well, two things. First of all,
have you ever used Twitter?
Well, quite extensively.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
You gotta go with it.
Two things. First, AI is the lubricant of the operating processes inside of companies. It will end up everywhere. That's B2B.
Okay.
B2C is going to be the major user interface for handling and relating with the immaterial dimension of the world. So that's going to flow, everything is going to flow through there. And there are major changes coming because of the antitrust decision against Google in Europe, because the recent yesterday antitrust decision, well, Supreme Court decision about an antitrust case in the US against Apple, and because of the crack in the confidence about Facebook. So there are, basically we are going to open competition in the user interface. The competition is going to be open again, and that is going to significantly open opportunities also for financial institutions.
The longest tweet in history, but every word was essential. Thank you very much, Stefano.
Oh, well, I think it's too late to imagine that you can control AI. The cat is out of the bag, and there is no way to put him back in the.
We don't even know where the cat is by now.
Yeah. So this is it's too late, and we'll wait and see what happens now.
And that's okay.
That's my job, so yes, that's okay.
Emilia, please.
Don't follow the AI, but shape it by your real need, a real use.
Channel AI.
Channelize, drive AI, and shape the use of AI. This is
With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this panel. And Paolo.
Good.
And I give you back, Paolo.
We are
the
changing
better
the positions.
Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Lazzaro. Very interesting. I will get your tweet message at the end. So, we move on open banking session. So I invite Connie Dorestein, founding partner of Bankify. She's listed one of the 50 most influential women in FinTech worldwide. Salvatore Borgese, managing director of Banca 5, Bankify. Massimo Milanta, partner in Deloitte Consulting and former CIO of UniCredit Bank. So, thank you for coming. Thank you for this section. We come back on open banking. I think one of the most interesting topic for the evolution of our industry. Connie, one of the results of our survey is one of the most important advantages is a fast track innovation, so accelerate innovation. So our participants say that open banking can accelerate the innovation. So we know that Bankify supporting banks incumbents to change the banking model to create new banking services. So I'd like to understand how you support your partner and customer to do that. We have a problem with the microphone. Maybe, is it turned on? There is the switch. Okay.
This one is better. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It was a delight to come here. Yes, how do we do this? I think one of and we talked about it earlier, one of the misconceptions I think still around open banking is that we still, when we want to innovate, we have to drag all this legacy with us. That is only true to a degree. I think one of the big things technology-wise that open banking has done is that with the use of APIs, we do not sort of need to pin into everything and change everything with us. We saw that as an opportunity. Secondly, it's not just the legislation, it's the societal move that makes people want to do banking in a different way. And I think the real opportunity is here, and my founding partner Mark thought the same, luckily, is that the business customer is the most underserved. Retail customers have the protection of politics and consumer bodies. Very large corporate customers have the protection of their own, their own size, basically. It's the business customer who always pays the bill. And I think one of the things that has truly been an oversight by banks is that they still believe in their silos, and they no longer have to live in their silos. Technology and everything can break down those silos. So if you look, for instance, at the gig customer, what we call the independent, the sole trader, they're massively underserved. Banks often put them either in the retail segment or in the business segment. In retail, they don't get the right services, and in business, they get way too big and too expensive services. The way we help them is say, okay, listen, we understand that you have this legacy infrastructure, you can't change everything. We also know that you know things are going to go to the cloud, so let's do this. We offer you a range of micro business services, and you as a bank, we're not sitting in your seat, you decide what you want to do with your customers. Bundle them together any way you like, across the silos, and make a new proposition for sole traders or for SMEs. And then they would say, yes, you know, but you're speaking to the wrong person, Connie. You need to talk to my colleague in retail because we put the gig customer in retail. And I said, no, we don't need to do that because you use all these micro business services. So if you want to derive the revenue from one piece of technology to one department and the other one to another, be my guest. So speaking, to your point, yes, we can truly innovate, but banks first need a sledgehammer to break down the silos. Because they really exist in their own business pattern and they no longer have to think that way. So I always say, do you want to optimize? There are lots of companies who can help you, but if you truly want to innovate and offer a different service in your existing bank with your existing customers, we can help you.
So you see a combination of legacy and open banking architecture, or you look at a gradual substitution?
We don't touch the legacy. That's the beauty, We sit behind.
It's not possible, you mean?
We don't have to. We don't have to touch it. We are micro-based services in the cloud. Banks can reach out to us. We don't hold their data. The data is theirs. So I think if you really look at technology, the opportunities are there now. And there's, of course, a lot to be done. When we go through RFPs with banks, they still send us a proposal, and the procurement sends us a contract, and they say, how many dogs are walking around your data center at night? And I say, well, it's a bit difficult in the cloud. I have no idea. There is still a lot to do, but it is all possible. And no, we don't care whether they book the transactions they do for their gig customers instantly into the core accounting system. You don't have to do that. Yeah. You can do that at night and leave your, in fact, I would say make the core banking system less active.
Thank you, Connie. Interesting. So Salvatore, moving on, one of the most interesting innovative banks in the Italian market, Banca 5, where is open banking, your open platform in your model, your business or in your model?
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me on this panel. First of all, I want to introduce our model because we define ourselves as an open proximity or open phygital bank, because in our model we mixed physical and digital user experience, and that is very important and relevant for our business model, because as you know, Banca 5 has around 20,000 of tobacconist shops where we deliver some of our services. Of course, above all, transactional services. Then we already were before open banking, PSD2, an open banking platform, because we served and we did services for our business partner like Poste Italiane for recharging prepaid cards, or for paying bollettino postale and so on. Then our approach was for our lives for the first of our introducing in the market with an open banking model approach. Then we after the open banking in the PSD2 revolution that we studied some years ago, we decided to make a sort of upgrade of our platform. First of all, with a very big change of paradigm, where of course there will be not only the model with the client, the end user, the clients, and the first direct point of contact with the bank, but even using business partners. Then we upscale our platform for delivering services, ASP services, PSP services, but even more VAS services for our business partner. For instance, for our main company, São Paulo, we already delivered the withdrawal services, but we subscribed agreement with other banks outside of the group for delivering withdrawal services. That is an open banking approach where we delivered in 6 months around 1 million of withdrawals transaction, that put our model in a very different way to the traditional model, where you can use a different point like ATM or a traditional teller machine or branches for serving your customers. In this approach, we decided even to collaborate with FinTech. And then we started not only to make agreement with business partners like banks or like corporates, as I did before with Poste Italiane, with other Intesa San Paolo or other banks for doing services, but even for other FinTech. And that we already subscribed to agreement with Oval and YOLO, that are two FinTech. Oval is a saving money app for doing saving services, and YOLO is an insurtech. Will use our platform for doing what? For doing different kind of services. As I said before, ASP, PSP services, but even VAS, or even delivering our banking product through their apps. Then in this way, we decided to be a pioneer within the Intesa San Paolo group for trying to explore this different kind of model, where the banks could be even behind your partner for delivery services or for selling product. For instance, for these two FinTech, we will deliver, and then we will support them to selling our banking product like a banking account or like a prepaid card. And then is or digital wallet. And that is a very great revolution for, as I said before, selling your product through business partner, through different digital or physical model of services.
So thank you, Salvatore. It's very interesting because we see that within one of the largest incumbent in our country in Europe, there is a very innovative entity and also the collaboration with other parties. The group accepted the collaboration with other parties. So I can say that you are based on open platform. Good. This is an optimistic view for the future. Massimo, so in your president experience in UniCredit as a CIO and now as coming back on consultancy services, how do you see the innovation? How the incumbent is trying to manage innovation, and now as a consultant, what's the different angle? And what are the most difficulties that you, in both experiences, you can share with us?
Okay, I believe in big incumbent banks, innovation is priority number one in the mind of the people. Then clearly this has crashes with everyday short-term priorities that you have coming from regulation, from security, for all the things that we encounter every day, with greater need of quality toward the customer, that are actually the short-term priority of a business. So I think the difficulty in big organizations, in banks in particular, is to manage this dilemma or investing in relatively long-term business, because I believe that innovation, especially in the bank, can only be a long-term initiative, while managing a complex boat, difficult to turn in the complexity of a current everyday life. Okay, this is, I believe, the biggest challenge. For this, I truly agree with the approach of having some dedicated part of a company, of a bank, experimenting in something new, experimenting in reality and not in laboratory, so launching some new initiative, because it's the best way to have people dedicated starting from a simpler, if you want, environment, focusing on the new rather than... We have discussed it. Maybe it was simply not so close. Sorry. So and so I believe that having a dedicated organization inside the bank, either a specialized bank, a specialized division, could be probably the best way to effectively tackle innovation. Clearly, the devil is in the detail, in my opinion. So means how independent is this organization in general to adopt new technology, to test, to develop new things, maybe not totally aligned with the standard of a group, but I think it is the proper way to proceed. From the perspective of a consultant, okay, I believe clearly it's easier to focus on a project-based approach on interesting things, on innovation project, while on as I said, especially in my previous role in the bank, I liked to think that I was focused on long-term innovation. In reality, I spent maybe some hour a week on that, and I was totally instead driven by other type of priorities. Instead, now here is easier to have, if you want, a more innovative thinking in order to help our customer change. In addition, I believe Deloitte has a good combination of functional and technical skills that, in my opinion, are crucial to helping customer to change, because I don't think it's only an IT discussion, because banks are overwhelmed by IT partners proposing vertical solution. The complexity is finding the right way to adopt the innovation for the business, from the technology to business processes that, okay, to be innovated, in my opinion, they must be known to a certain part, okay? So I believe we are in a good position to do that.
I think it's clear from all of you that, and maybe I connect to the first presentation from Hans, the edge point that maybe the innovation, and so also open banking, open platform should be done a little bit outside the core legacy or core processes in the bank, not because they are not able or they haven't the competencies to do that, but because they are focused on the business as usual. So coming back on you, Connie.
Yeah, I really would love to say something on that. I don't know, how many people in the audience are banks or fintechs? Fintechs, how many fintechs are you? Quite a few. And then we have bankers and advisors, yeah. Because here's a story. This is the second time we're doing like a startup fintech thing. And I'm a slightly older woman, and before you're going to blame me of Me Too, you know, I have a Why Not Me badge on my back at my age, so don't worry. I'm going to be slightly politically incorrect, because this whole thing about partnerships between banks and fintechs unnerves me a bit, experience. Because what you see is the fintech is a beautiful young woman, and every man, every bank wants to have a beautiful young woman on his arm. So they all start dating, and they have these innovation hubs, and they collect beautiful young women or men or whatever they like. And they're parading around with them. At some point, the two of them, the partnership slightly changes, and they fall in love. And the bank says, you know what, I really, really like you. Why don't you stop being my mistress and you become my wife? It has massive benefits. I will look after you forever. You have access to all of my resources and my data. You'll have a much better life. It'll be way more secure. And I will look after you. And the mistress thing is, yeah, you know, it's a bit tough being a mistress, because you always have to be on the lookout for new ones and look over your shoulder. And, you know, there's always funnier ones. And you think, maybe it's a good idea to tie myself with this bank and I'll marry the bank. Well, I have a word of warning for you. My grandfather used to say, when your mistress becomes your wife, you have a vacancy. And this is true. And so I'm not proclaiming we should all be mistresses. I'm not denouncing marriage. You know, I believe in beautiful relationships, but I think we must look at those relationships much fairer and more honest, and say, do I want to be a mistress or do I want to be a wife? I, for one, know that professionally I want to be a mistress. It suits us better. Does that mean I can't have long-standing and very loyal relationships? Of course I can, with a bank. When my grandfather died, there were 3 women sitting front row, and they stayed with him for 20 years. I think it's important that you realize, if you're the mistress, you will still have freedom to work with others. You can be innovative, you can be different, you can remain whatever attracted you to first. You can still say, no, not tonight, I'm working on something else, not on your roadmap. And if you're the wife, that's fine too, but do understand that then you become part of the incumbent culture and everything, and before you know it, you'll be wiping runny noses, and there'll be a new fintech on his arm. So let's not take this partnership thing too lightly. You really have to make up your mind, both the bank and the fintech. And I think that is, in terms of innovation, is very, very important.
So I discovered that first they have to be outside bank, and second, secret. Okay, good. Salvatore, coming back on the survey, there are main constraints or difficulties: competition, cybersecurity risk, change management, revenue sharing in terms of margin, decrease of margins, and cost that could be different in terms of management. So, according to your experience, what are the main difficulties when you approach open banking, open platform? And if I can ask you to add also something about something that I didn't see in the results, but I believe is an important point, is the quality and continuity of services using third parties in a very complex ecosystem. Maybe because the scale of some volumes are not so big, maybe you, in your case, yes, to create issues on the market, on the customer services.
Okay. Starting with Connie's sample, in our approach, of course, our wife is our current business. That, of course, has to
and
guarantee
regular business.
P&L, our results. Okay. And then we have to, of course, to see on new beautiful women and new business like the partnership with FinTech for, of course, leverage and boost more and more our P&L, our results. But of course, in our approach, we are not a simple startup. We are a bank. We have regulated. Then we have, of course, a lot of regulatory constraint that we have get strongly result at the end of year, and then we have to produce margin. Then, of course, we have to manage and mix the current business with the new business. But even in the current business, we try to start with new open banking approaches, as I said before, for delivering withdrawal services to external banks of the group. Then it's, as I said, leverage on our current business. Then for building up a new business, a new partnership with FinTech, we agreed with our main company, with our main group, Intesa Sanpaolo, to starting with a very open project approach, not to doing project in vertical way, but to starting with a squad for legal and compliance, for IT operation, for the sales and marketing, exploring UX, UI, and so on, and for the financial, to the business plan. Then, as to every squad has to mix and to interact with others for delivering an overall project plan, an overall program plan, and then
who is
having
oversighting everything.
Oversighting, we have a program manager structure that oversight everything. But as I said, we're starting all project streams in a parallel way and mix the competence within. Then, of course, this kind of approach has to structure a lot of parts of this partnership that is sometimes hidden, because in terms of legal compliance, you have to manage sometimes in a borderline way the part that you can do as a bank with banking license, and the part that your partners can do as without license of IP or email or banking license. And then you have to consider every kind of legal compliance and regulatory aspects in a very, very detailed way. Then we as I said, we started with this kind of project approach with the squad. We built up an open, not just open banking tech platform, but banking project approach platform. Because of course, we strongly believed to build, and we already delivered an open banking platform up to the legacy that of course is a nightmare for every bank to touch. And then we invest to deliver an open banking platform, IT banking platform on top. But of course, it's not the only part of the value chain of this kind of.
It's a sort of a
enabler,
logical platform.
Yes, but
approach.
You have to approach the project not just in a technical way. And then for doing that, you have to consider, as I said, all the part that I described before: legal and compliance, IT ops, sales and marketing, financial. And I think that in this way you can reach your goal, you can reach the results in a very harmonized way, even oversighting all the activity with, let me say, a very strong, in a point of view of regulation and compliance, main group like Intesa Sanpaolo.
So the answer is, in summary, a new approach, a new integrated approach, end-to-end.
Yep.
It's not just technology, but it's a sort of a combination of different competencies.
A mix of competences that you have to put in place at the start of the project, at the start of your business model and business partnership approach.
All together.
Yeah, together.
Clear. So we have all 4 minutes. Massimo, very quickly, coming back on what you said about innovation, and also from Connie and Salvatore, in few words, how is the most efficient way for collaboration between incumbents and FinTech or new solutions provider?
To interact?
To interact.
I believe that first of all, we need to we should agree on the role of a FinTech versus the organization. Are they technology provider? Are they idea provider? Are they partners in business? If I look at the discussion we had on open banking, I would guess that in many cases, especially for innovative ideas, banks should think them more as partner in a business. If you want to enter in an open banking environment, in my opinion, it's correct to consider to invest as a bank in a new concept of bank, and then leveraging on partners to create services. Okay, to do that. So that's why sometimes instead, as you said, banks make a little confusion and treat a FinTech like a provider. So when they see as a potential competitive advantage, try to buy it or to include inside, and so reducing the innovative capability of a partner. Okay. From a practical terms, I'm come back to the my initial thinking. The problem is to preserve a number of people focused in innovation in the bank from the other priority of the bank itself, so that they can focus on that. But on the other side, we should have tried to avoid to build silos, because otherwise you have a typical process. We have a group of people testing technology, POCs, things like that, producing nothing, and at the end creating, not fulfilling at least a lot of aims of the organization. So I believe it's important to set simple rules like rotation of people, like a clear role of the one who build the new model and the one who industrialize it. Okay, so that and there are no silos. You don't do things 2 times. You test new technology, in my opinion, new technology and new ideas, but by definition some of them fail. And then as soon as you believe they are promising, you try to incorporate in the mainstream. But in any case, my personal opinion that the only way to make a shift is to build something new and to move gradually service from the old to the new. I personally believe that changing the old is something, improving the old is mandatory because it's the one we are using today. So if you have an internet banking or mobile connected to an older architecture and is not fast enough, the quality is not enough, you have to invest to improve it. If it's not secure, you have to invest. But on the other side, you need to have a long-term strategy, because the complexity that you are keeping with you, both technical but also functional complexity of decades of regulation, of investment and so on, is not something that you can change.
I know. I agree.
Substitute it, but you don't change.
So, in the last few minutes, for all of you, few words on your vision on open banking for the next 12 months, 1 year.
Okay, I think that all of us, myself included, we still have some work to do in truly embracing open banking, because we are crossing a Rubicon. We are venturing into the unknown, and we're still trying with old techniques like planning and forecasting to sort of sketch out the future. And I think it's more radical than that. I think we're really crossing the Rubicon. And so if one thing I can call upon from my colleagues, my investors, and my customers is courage. We really do not know yet what we're unleashing. We do not know where we're going yet. So I would say for the next 10 months, keep trying, pick your team, the people you want to travel with on those journeys is the most important thing.
Courage. Okay.
Yeah, I think courage and be prepared for crossing the Rubicon.
Okay. Salvatore, for you?
For me, in a very short tweet, open banking, in my opinion, is first of all open mind at 360 degrees for all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. Then I mean banks, I mean partners, fintechs or business partners, I mean all the actors in the value chain. Because as I said before, you have to think about that the model could be different. You can sell product for your third parties. Third parties can sell your products. But at the end, you have to try to reach the first of all goal that, as we said in the first part of the meeting, in the first part of this event, was to create value for the end customers. And then is to put at the first level of the common interest for the stakeholders. This is my final statement.
Massimo?
I agree with what was said. I could add that for me, open banking is building a platform, building a place where myself as a bank can contribute, possibly, hopefully orchestrate, but where I serve a customer through a number of partners. So, in my opinion, the value of a platform creates value for all the participants. So, not thinking only really on a self-interest, but thinking on the partnership with others, because you create value with that. You don't only split value. You don't only split.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now I would.
So exactly. So you just need to move 2 chairs, Paolo. So take your seat. I would like to invite Demetrio. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 more sessions to go, okay? And then we'll all have deserved drinks and cocktails and networking time. The 2 last sessions are about blockchain and cybersecurity. But I promise you, we are not going to make them as standard as it sounds.
Promise.
Okay? Promise. So let's start with a little story. So Lazzaro, here in the first row, in 2012, he approved a $200 budget times 100 people, okay, at Cybos. Who has Cybos? Swift? Raise your hands who know what that is. A few? Okay, so Cybos is an annual event from Swift with, like 10,000 attendees and, thousands of banks and stuff. So we created InnoTribe, which was this, forward-looking brand. Bitcoin was born in 2009, so in 2011, December 2011 exactly, you could buy, so the Bitcoin was roughly, $0.1 dollars, okay? So
can I try?
So we gave $200 to, like, imagine right now, we give you $200 in Bitcoin to everyone in this room. Okay? So this is what happened in 2012. None of them kept the Bitcoin.
Really?
They all throw it away.
So we have 1,000 sad guys.
Absolutely.
But they lost the secret keys or the...
Because it was an USB key. And they just lost it because, what the fuck, it's, $200 value of Bitcoin. This is what, like $3?
Nothing.
200 Bitcoins at 0.1 is what, like $2 each? It's, nothing, straight away. So, a lot of missing millionaires on this. Why this intro? Is because in the meantime, we have seen dozens of applications of blockchain, from from payments to notarizations of services, from trades. So, what is really happening? I mean, why everyone B2B and Ripple? So. Why everyone is talking about it, and everyone is almost convinced that it's going to be disruptive for this industry, but very little is happening. Demetrio, be as blunt as you want?
Very little is happening. No, actually, no. We are doing so many things. So
Yeah, but
many
nobody
different
knows about
projects.
it. I mean, okay, whatever. So many things to show me.
Well, you must probably know that in Italy we have 18 different banking groups working together, more or less 50 different ABI code, that is almost 85% of the Italian banking actives, working together, creating a fantastic new system to handle what we call spunta interbancaria. That means
Sounds
basically
sexy. Really sexy.
Reconciliation.
Extremely checked.
All the
Basically,
reconciliation.
this is reconciliating what we call, we have very special accounts between banks, and the reconciliation of these accounts now is going to be by internal law. I mean, it is a procedure that has been defined by the Italian Banking Association, will be the rule on blockchain.
Wow, tell me why is not lipstick on a pig?
Well, because it's the first time, because we had to learn how to work together. This is the very special fact of blockchain in Italy. Banking are learning how to work together, how to create a co-petition between them instead of competition. And this is brand new for them. It's definitely something that is amazing. What is happening is amazing.
Paolo, what do you think? I mean, he's talking about a bunch of, the community working together and stuff. How convinced are you? Forget you're working for Deloitte, of course.
Forget that I'm a potential customer.
So I'm not from Deloitte. I'm talking as Paolo Gianturco.
Exactly. Here we go.
I mean, I think that this case, this case is I agree. I mean, it's amazing because it's an experiment to collaborate and to decrease the cost of some processes like reconciliation. In my personal view, the point of a public blockchain remains something important for me. For me, public means that anyone can enter and anyone can go out. I think it was one of the most important features of a blockchain in Bitcoin. For instance, I can mention an open blockchain that could be interesting. It's a sovereign. It is used for digital identity. This is a case I like because it's not so open, but anyone can enter, can create a node, anyone can go out, more or less. But it's public. It's open. So just to be controversial, the point is blockchain will be like internet, intranet, or it will be another journey. This is my question.
Demetrio, can you mention or talk about something which is as compelling as the ecosystem play, which you just mentioned, that actually has great potential? Because if you were the moderator and you were asking me, I would say, okay, the service notarization, great. Real estate for land registry, we mentioned earlier, great. Because it's a no-brainer efficiency problem to solve. What else?
That's a good point, because if you look at the use cases, the real one, I mean, the one that have a minimum success, we are going down basically to notarization. Whatever kind of notarization or whatever kind of registration, I mean, basically the blockchain is a registry. It is
Immutability.
It's an immutable register. So it's basically the real use case in which you find the most of the potential. But the good point that we see now is that we are opening to a new kind of use of the blockchain that is all related to smart contracts. I don't know how many of the audience knows, but IVAS, the regulator of the insurances, is working together with one of the main university here in Milan and a technological partner that unfortunately is not. And with 3 banks, 3 insurance groups and a broker. We are designing and implementing on a blockchain products, insurance products, that we're going to sell to almost 20,000 customers for a period of 3 weeks, in which these products are directly connected to external source of information that makes the single smart contract able to basically pay the customer if the event that is connected to the policy happens. We prepared 3 different products. One is related to delay of takeoff for the flights. Another one is if you lose your luggage. And the third one is if you have a bad meteor, if the weather is bad. And we're going to use it for the next 3 months, in July, August, and September. And after that, we are going to go back to the regulator and told them, okay, we tried it, it's good, this sandbox is working properly, but we need to amend a certain number of rules that basically now are on the insurance industry. And from that moment on, we are just want to wait the go from the regulator and create these products and make them available for all the customers, because this is squeezing the time the customer has to have back the money because of the event was insured.
So if we just double click on this, so say that this project is successful, okay? You know, why is it relevant? Is because is efficiencies, is cost savings, is customer satisfaction?
User experience. It changed completely the user experience, because imagine you are going to the airport and the pop-up of the application of your banks is coming up, and you're going to the airport. Maybe you need to be insured by the fact that the flight is delayed, or you lose luggage, or maybe you are going to spend 5 days on Maldives and you want to have sun. No? For those matters, it's important to have in a few clicks the product available, and you want to be paid if anything happens immediately. When you are still in the airport, no, the flight is delayed, the smart contract received the information from the Oracle, and it's paying you immediately. This is typical. When a flight is delayed, when I'm in the airport, the flight is delayed, I spend money. I buy a sandwich, I go in a shop, I buy something. So it's the typical damage for me if the flight is late is not the fact that I'm going to delay my arrival, but the fact that I'm spending money in the airport. So for those kinds of use cases, you can invent something new, and you have the tools to create this new experience. Because with the smart contract, you can do it. And for having a smart contract, you need a blockchain and blah, blah, blah. So I think for insurances and banking connected to them, because of course the Mediolan Group has inside many different kind of businesses, I think that will be a game changer.
Okay, so Lazzaro, I'm going to ask.
On this point, can I integrate? Because I think that tokenization of economy will be the big shift with blockchain. I completely believe that there will be, in the future, my mortgage will be a smart contract, and I will be able to move this smart contract very easily. And we will have open blockchain where we can have this kind of contracts.
Fully agree. Fully agree. We are working together with a startup that is actually designing a system in which it's a B2B system, in which we can somehow interact between businesses, creating tokenization of credit elements, different kind of, and exchanging them on hourly basis or daily basis. So, I mean, the time you want to have this credit of liquid instead available is up to you, and it is beautiful.
So Thank you, Paolo, for bringing up the tokenization, because the reason why I called Lazzaro, just because I don't remember the name of this initiative, but you will help me because you funded it when you were CEO of Swift. So Swift tried to to optimize, to innovate the trade industry, the 700 messages, by funding a company that was called Bolero, exactly. So Bolero was a mess of a bunch of players trying to talk together to make sure that traders from all over the world got coordinated, because at the end of the day, from China and France, what comes first? Basically the products or the payments, right? So, what was the challenge of Bolero is that the number of players you need to put together, from the customs to the payment players to the logistic players, was so complex that at the end of the day, it wasn't so easy, right, Lazzaro, to actually come out with a solution that everybody could understand, could productize, and most of people will still ended up using the MT700 classic, sort of old style. Isn't that the same challenge we're having when we talk about, for example, asset tokenization on a blockchain? Because at the end of the day, regulators will not allow you to do this so easily. One. Second, there are so many players that need to align.
Do you want to start? Then
I think that is. I had imagined that was almost a nightmare from an IT point of view. The infrastructure technologically was very complex. Most probably that was the real pain. So the blockchain by design is solving this issue. Because you can add node to a blockchain basically without, even in a regulated blockchain, even in a closed blockchain, you can add node quite easily. So you can add node with relevant roles, depending the kind of design that you have, but basically blockchain is designed for that, to add node and to control how the node is playing its role inside the business community quite easily. I have in my mind the core structure, but there are many others that are working properly for this kind of use case. So from that point of view, the infrastructure could be extremely easy to implement with the blockchain. Totally different story is implementation of the mechanism of regulating the partnership between the different players and so on. That is the usual complexity of a huge IT system.
Microphone.
Yeah, sure. Come on stage. Come on stage. Don't be shy. Come on stage.
We have a problem with the microphone.
So everybody can see you.
Shall I bring my own? Oh,
yes.
no. Okay. Good. So I think valid use cases for blockchain in the supply chain exist. Why? Because that is a very tightly knit number of players, and somebody is at the heart of it. So it's easy to get players that want to get paid, and if I'm buying from you, you shall do what I tell you to do, and you'll send me invoices how I want them. So vertical integration and blockchain use in that use case of supply chain management, absolutely. And it's the right medicine, and it really works. Where it breaks down in trade finance is because you are trying to get out of places where a player can force the others to actually do something. Every player needs to see the value of doing it for themselves. And you need too many of them together for the system to start delivering value to each one of them. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So the supply chain, so the examples that we've seen, and the banks at the Santander has very many examples of use cases in trade finance that actually works. Standard Chartered as well. So there are a number of them, but you see that there is a primus inter pares there that is actually dictating how it works, and the vertical, and then it does work, absolutely. And it's a much better solution. It is the many-to-many world that really is more difficult to understand. Am I making sense?
If you think that basically you can, if you tokenize the asset that you want to handle somehow, you can associate to that token always a smart contract that is designed
in asset management,
to follow
perfect.
the rules.
In asset management, perfect. Not in, unless it's a commodity, and is a.
Even if it's not a commodity, why not? Because the rules that you define is the rules that are ruling actually the behavior of the many that are working on the same business network. So you design it.
I think we need to take this offline because we're
of
boring
course.
everybody.
And actually, that please, anyone, any of you would like jump in. But the reason why I brought that question, it's not a question, it's a statement, is because I have a challenge for the audience. There is a company which is a joint venture between IBM and Merckx. The name is. Anybody with Google that can try? I think that there is sales or sell or something. So IBM made the joint venture with Merckx with the container Merckx, like 30% of the containers on Earth, they are traveling through Merckx in Merckx containers. Okay, they made a joint venture to put that containers and their content on a blockchain. Now. Can someone tell what more compelling business case we can find? There are two giants. Sorry? Trade lens, exactly. I was saying who find it in a t-shirt, but you have a t-shirt already on FinTech stage. That's okay. So, and they're struggling. Why? Because although the business case is super compelling, we don't need to explain, just common sense how much the industry overall can save and how service could be optimized. But because the ecosystem around it, and in this case the customs, the banks, and everything that is not the guy who puts the container on the ships, okay, and the guy IBM who develops the software around it, everybody else needs to align.
I think there is another, most probably, complexity in this kind of systems. The technology we're talking about is immature. With the example, the use case I was talking about before about the Italian banking system, the Spunta project, we have 500 million records. So a decent number of records, but in a way, a small system for banking operations. Well, we had to try the infrastructure so heavily before having a minimum of acceptable performance. Minimum. And we are not yet really happy about that. But because the infrastructure is based on a technology that is extremely immature.
Inefficient or immature.
We are somehow in the middle of the 90s with the web, all right? So we are using still Netscape, and we are searching with Yahoo, and we have the first engine that is Alta Vista. So we are living on the blockchain that situation that we lived on the web in the mid of the 90s. So of course we see that the future is fantastic. Absolutely, we can implement everything. We have already all in mind, but the technology we have in our hands is still really immature, and we have to work on it, like we did on the web. No way.
But it's not for everything.
It is not for everything.
For all use cases.
It is not for everything. We know which kind of use cases will be brilliant on that, but it's not for everything.
Paolo, I would like you to, wrapping up the session, because you and Deloitte are, will keep investing, right, in the lab and in the potential use cases and in collaboration with other fintechs. So, how do you see this, sort of collaboration and research evolving?
You mean in terms of
Why
finance
will you
or-
keep investing in this?
I will invest in that. We will invest because there are some use cases that we can build with blockchain. Maybe trade finance could be one. Just to come back on your question, I think that sometimes there is confusion between using blockchain for timestamping or for smart contract in trade finance, for instance. Second, because we see the tokenization, and we believe that tokenization can be the future. Another example in the supply chain is not in the financial services, is the healthcare. You can combine Internet of Things, cryptocurrency, and smart contract to manage complex health devices.
Utilities.
Yeah, utilities too.
To buy energy.
Where I'm very skeptical when there is a complexity to link physical processes or assets with blockchain. I don't like some tracking of a supply chain to assure that the product is well done. When there is too much contact with the physical processes, I don't know if it's possible to use blockchain.
In Italy, we have the chicken chain, no?
The chicken chain, yeah.
So, as if you're curious, go and look at the startup called Slice in Tel Aviv. They are tokenized real estate assets. Sorry? They are tokenized real estate assets, and they are struggling, or not struggling. They are actually their challenge is how to make the regulators to accept it. But that's a concrete case if you're curious, and there are many other cases. We could, of course, go on this convo for a long time, but we have our next keynote, but I'm not even sure we could call it a keynote. For the moment, please give a big round of applause to Paolo and Demetrio. Thank you. So, I don't need this anymore because the next speaker I know quite well. Her name is Mariela Atanasova, Mela for friends and family, former hacker, converted in auditor, ex-Swift, co-founder of InnoTribe, and now an expert in design and human interaction. So she's doing a surprise that I don't even know, because I asked her to do a keynote. She said, come on, it's going to be 5:45. People are going to get bored. So be trustful in Mela's design capacity. Stay with us for the next 20 minutes. Mela.
Okay, if that wasn't a challenge, I don't know what is. So 2 challenges he gave me. He didn't tell the other one. I have to do it short as well. Not only do it fun, but do it short. So I'm fully conscious that I'm standing together with my presentation between you and the bar. And so I have to talk to you about cybersecurity, a topic which can be quite tedious or depressing. So instead of boring you to death with lots of statistics and analysis on threats and stuff and protection and attack vectors, I decided actually to do something different. If this works. Yeah. So I suggest that we actually get the party started, get warmed up for drinks, and do something a little bit more entertaining. Any of you play computer games? Computer games, hands up. Not of the Candy Crush variety, but the other kinds like battles and stuff where you fight between the worlds, epic things, world domination kind of games. Yeah? Who's doing that? All right, for those of you who don't, This is going to be your first experience. I'm inviting you to join me in a game. Cyber battle. We're going to chase criminals and we're going to neutralize malware. Today, here, right now. Warning. All the characters and events in this game are 100% real. In the past. Are you ready? Yes? Because I'll need you to play with me. Now, that screen over there is going to my game console. You're looking at this one as your game console. And let's see what happens. I don't know why this is advancing without me clicking, but let's see. So as any other game, this game needs a little bit of explanation. So the protagonist of our game is the human. You know, human like you, me, everybody around us. We know them very well. The people who go about their lives and do their stuff and do their businesses, do things every day. And that human is going to be going about their job and things are going to happen to them. Our job is going to be to help them navigate. We'll be looking at the game through the eyes of that human person. Now, in the game as well, we have players. And in this case, we have two teams, the villains and the cyber SWAT. And there's different players that join and leave at different times, because this is a multiplayer game. And so, the villain, we know those as well, they call it hackers, crackers, cyber criminals, cyber punks, and whatnot. Lots of different things. We know those as well. They're the guys that can't talk to humans, they wear a hood, they sit behind a computer, they're socially inadequate, they type 2,000 words per second or who knows what. And then there's the other guys. These are the good guys. The Cyber SWAT, the Special Weapons and Tactics team. They're going to help us win the battles. And the battles is what happens to the human. They're different types. They each one have different constraints. They use different weapons at different moments, so you can't do everything everywhere. And in our particular game, we're going to play only a few of these. 4 battles. Now, a tip with your game console. On top, you'll be seeing at all times who is playing whom. And don't forget, the main protagonist of the game is our human, who will be going through different scenarios. Let's get started. So this is Jens Bergmans. He works for Deutsche Bahn. He's an operator. He sits in the command center and he monitors the trains. His job is to ensure their security. And one day, while he was working, his computer freezes. And this is what he sees on his screen. Oops, your files have been encrypted. If you want them decrypted, pay us some bitcoins, 300 to be precise. What should he do? It's your turn, guys. Pay? Lose his data? The Deutsche Bahn, with its precision? Come on. Pay? Pay? That's our choice? No, we don't pay. Well, a good thing is that he first unplugged his computer so that he cannot infect other machines. Now, while he was debating the question, researchers were actually observing this infection going wild. Why is this going forward? And what was happening is that they were, it was a ransomware. It was a virus that was propagating across multiple countries, doing different things to many, many different computers very, very fast. And so everybody was trying to figure out what the hell was going on and how did this happen. So all the cyber squad team got together and they start discussing what are we going to do. They managed to isolate one of these. Does anybody know the name of this one? Wanna cry? Wanna cry. So they get together and they start dissecting this thing. And pretty quickly they figure out that it uses a problem, as usual, in Windows systems a particular bug in the messaging system that allows it to penetrate computers and seize control, and from there start propagating to all other computers that are connected to it. So Microsoft immediately got on the case trying to fix the problem. Meanwhile, our squad team is sitting together and trying to figure out what else they can do, because the infection is just going on. 200,000 computers infected in the first 48 hours in 150 countries across the world. Until one guy called Malware Tech discovered a kill switch. He discovered that the virus looks for a particular DNS, looks to find a server outside, and if it doesn't find it, it propagates. So he did a very clever thing. He created that server and stopped the infection. Scores. First of all, pay attention to our players in this first battle. On the villain side, Shadow Brokers and Lazarus, two of the very, very big groups, both of them from Korea. However, do you notice the top one? NSA playing on the villain side. So what happened actually, it is NSA. NSA created an exploit that they were very, very cautious with, but they lost. And they didn't tell anyone. And a couple of days after they lost that exploit, it was incorporated in this malware, and that's how it started propagating. So, unfortunately, this time they play on the bad guy's side. On the good guy's side, we had quite a few players that were collaborating together. Now, let's see what the scores are. 48 hours of the initial infection before it was stopped. A few variants were created afterwards. From the initial infection, there were quite a few machines infected, not a lot of monetary damage. But the kind of companies that got infected were quite significant. Hospitals, the National Health System in the UK, the Russian Minister of Internal Affairs, transportation systems, telcos, and so on, including DHL, Nissan, Renault, and others. On the good guy's side, well, we did manage to prevent some estimated damages. We don't know how actual damage happened, how much happened, but the estimated prevented damage is around 4 billion. However, still today, there are 70,000 machines that are vulnerable, according just to one of the security experts out there. So I'm afraid in this first round, win for the villain. Ready for the next one? All right. I want to introduce you to those two gentlemen, Raymond and Ravi. Ravi is the CEO of Agari, and Raymond is their CFO. And one day, Raymond receives an email from Ravi asking him if he's in the office. And because he wasn't, one of his assistants replied accordingly. After which he received a second email from Ravi asking him for an urgent transfer because of vendor negotiations that were going on and an advance had to be paid. Decision time, what do? We pay? It's the CEO asking? Yes? Yes? No? No. Yeah. There was the email address there that was a giveaway. While the name was correct and it was the CEO, the email address that was associated with it wasn't. Now, there was something else as well that happened which helped Raymond make this decision, because a few months earlier he had seen a similar message come by with a slightly different request. But what happened at that time is that they actually engaged with the attackers to understand how the attack works. So there was a whole bunch of emails that were exchanged between Agari and the attacking company called London Blue, and they understood how London Blue actually targets people. So they were very, very sure when they received the email that this was a signature attack, even though it was talking about an actual event that was happening in the company. An important thing about London Blue, This is the new version of the Nigerian prince scam, Nigerian-based, with a lot of support abroad. And what they're really, really, really good at is targeting. They are excellent at finding the CEOs, the CFOs, the context, the reconnaissance that they do on all of their targets is so amazing that their messages are super well targeted to coincide with vendor purchases, with M&As, and so forth. So they look pretty much legitimate. So in this particular case, now these guys targeted 50,000 different people in 82 countries, all Fortune 1000 companies. The estimated total amount of losses from this type of thing, not just London Blue, but everybody else as well, is about 9 billion, 70% up since last year and growing. Now, these guys have been operating for 8 years, and they change their signature all the time. Yeah. Now, the good thing is that for Agari, in this particular case, they didn't get hurt because they responded well. And not only that, they actually understood in precise detail how this attacking group functions. They published all this information, it's freely available. And so they prevented damage for themselves. They actually discovered the who behind, because until then we didn't know who was doing these things. And they managed to educate the community on how to understand this type of pattern. So in this case, score for the good guys. Ready for the next one? 2 more to go. All right. Let's see what this one is going to be. All right, October 2018. What happened is that so there was a release of a major game at this point in time. A massively multiplayer game, online game, and all of the gamers who were super, super eager to play the game were badly disappointed. For 20 hours, they couldn't play because they had latency problems, they couldn't connect, the servers were going down, there were all sorts of issues. What was going on? Any guess? Attack? Yeah, what sort of attack? Any guess? Denial of service. So the company actually came out after 10 hours or so saying, sorry, to say, but we kind of have been hacked. So we are experiencing slight issues of connectivity because of a denial of service attack. Now, you may ask, why should we care at all about games and what happens to them? Well, the reason is because games are kind of like the canary in the coal mine thing. They're an indicator of other stuff that's happening. A lot of stuff gets tested on games, and particularly distributed denial of service attacks target about 85% of all distributed attacks target gaming platforms. And in this particular case, researchers got really interested because this particular event coincided with the launch of a major new player. Zulsec. Zulsec published an announcement with a pretty demonstration and a marketing video to go with it for their new platform called 0x Booter. And what this platform does, it's a denial of service platform for sale as a service. So you don't need to know anything about denial of service attacks. You just go on their website, they explain how to use it, you pay your fee, and off you go. Now, what's amazing with these guys is that they treat this as a serious business, including their marketing videos.
For one reason, and that reason is because you need your business competitors, rivals, haters, or whatever the reason is, or who they are, to go down. Well, you, my friend, you've came to the right place. If you want your business competitors to go down, well, they can. If you want your rivals to go offline, well, they will. Not only that, we are providing a short-term to long-term DDoS service or scheduled attacks, starting $5 per hour for small personal websites to $10 to $50 per hour for huge DDoS protected websites. Prices may depend on how huge the website is or how protected it is. With 4 years of DDoSing experience and several years of studying on DDoS protection, you cannot go wrong. But what I'm saying is we are capable of handling the sites for days, weeks, months. Just email us at gwapo@hackforums.net or add us on Messenger. We are almost 24/7 online to serve your needs.
So that's how they market their business, their value proposition. It's a pretty good advertisement, isn't it? This is what the platform actually looks like. Super nice interface. You go online. I would draw your attention to the numbers on top. So the platform is capable of pushing 400 to 500 gigabytes of traffic at people. And it has between 16,000 and 20,000 bots connected to it. So it's pretty powerful stuff. Pricing schemes for any pocket. Just click and choose. Subscription available as well. And a number of different launch attacks you can choose from. Now, if you don't know, there's always pre-configured options you can click on, or somebody may advise you. Chat is available online as well, automated 24 hours for your pleasure and service. And this particular platform, on top of that, uses a bunch of bots that are IoT bots. So yes, they attacked the gaming platform with it. But imagine what kind of stuff you can do with it if you launch it against something else. Scores. Zulsec on the villain side. Russians, by the way. Couple of players on the security side that actually detected this and analyzed it. They watch all the time gaming sites in order to detect this kind of stuff. Scores, let's see. We don't have all the figures, but for 2 weeks after it was launched, we know that there were more than 300 attacks that were launched using it. The calculated downtime cost of an attack, $750,000 per day of downtime. Now imagine only 300 attacks, how much downtime that may be. I don't want to put that many zeros behind the numbers. It is still in the wild. And on the good guy side, I'm afraid we don't have anything else to do with it. We have nothing to protect against. So, score again for the villains. And the final battle. Let's see if we can win this one at least. Now, Kaspersky, at the end of last year, noticed some very interesting suspicious activity on one of their clients. It was Central Asian diplomatic mission, and they found a malware on the system that was stealing data. A very, very sophisticated malware, or shall we say spyware. They named it the Taj Mahal. The ATP stands for Advanced Protection Threat. And what it does is that it embeds in your computer and it uses 80 different attacks to steal data from you. It can access your USB sticks, your stuff connected to your computer, it can access your camera and audio, it can record your conversations, it can start conversations on its own. It does some stuff that has never been done before, like steal documents from your print queues. Very, very sophisticated. Great for Kaspersky, they immediately released a signature file to stop the thing. So anybody who has their software with that signature file will be able to detect it. However, during the analysis of the software, what they found is that its first code was 5 years old. So this thing has been out in the wild for 5 years without us knowing what the hell it does. And who to. So, we still don't know who is the villain behind this. There is no identity yet. Unidentified subject. Kaspersky on the other side. We have no idea how many machines have been infected. We don't know what damage has been caused. We can assume some data has been compromised, probably in high places, and it's been living for years. We do have some things on our cyber SWAT team side. Anybody who has the right signature is protected. And they managed to do this very, very fast. So this time, score for the good guys. However, if you notice, at the end of it, even though we're even scores, the villains have a bit more points than us. So, while this game is over, it does beg the question, are we always going to be running behind? Is this a business where protection is the only thing that you can do, and cleaning the mess after it happens is what the business is about? And so I want to finish with a little bit more optimistic view than this, because I have hope, and I want to tell you why I have hope. So why do I think that the cyber SWAT actually has chances to win? Better detection. So we have access to much better tools than we ever had before. These are examples of real-time monitoring tools which see attacks as they happen, real time. Why is this significant? Because before, we never knew stuff real time. We only knew it when it reached a peak, where there were enough people that were talking about it. Now we're at the point where detection happens at the time the attack happens. Second point is that the number of days between when something is detected and when it's solved has been going down significantly. We're still not there, but it's going down. So perhaps with a little bit more work in this space, we'll get to a point where we can do predictive. Wouldn't it be great to be able to predict outbreaks before they happen and protect against them, a bit like vaccines? Second thing is, we've moved from dissecting just code to dissecting and understanding the human behind. It is the same what law enforcement people do with serial killers. Understanding the psychology and the behavioral motivation of the person gives you a much better chance of defeating them, because that doesn't change. While their tools may change, their signature of how they execute attack may change, their psychology very rarely changes. And now more and more we're combining behavioral profiling with the technical stuff. And the third point is that we're creating much more sophisticated ways of dealing with security. We're moving away from the medieval way of perimeter defense with a single fence with many fences and so forth, to a way which is much more sophisticated, embedded, which protects things at an atomic level, where you're looking at individual pieces of data, your identity, your passwords, your valuables, and you're protecting every single one of these individually according to how important it is. Not only that, you're thinking about not just your perimeter of your organization, but how it goes outside of that organization and how it connects to other organizations, so that it creates porous environments in context. And the last point for me personally is a positive one, is that we're finally working together. And I think a signal in that space is the Cybersecurity Act that was signed in December by all the European countries. So finally, there's enough effort being put into not just designing and rethinking how we do security, but standardizing it. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mela. Thank you. You will all receive an email, if it's not already in your phone, to a free subscription to our cybersecurity game. You can pay in Bitcoin after the first trial. Mela, thank you very much. That was amazing. I hope you had as much fun as we did. And I will leave the word to Paolo, who has some announcement to do. Thank you.
Okay, very quickly, because we have the bar. So two things. First, I want to thank you, the FinTech team, all the guests, all the organization, and especially all of you that in the 4th edition are following this FinTech Talks journey. Second, we are already thinking and working about the next FinTech Talks, so you will receive shortly an email, not with malware or something like this, to participate a very short survey to understand and to get from you what you want to talk about the next year. So thank you, and have fun with the bar. Thank you very much.